I'm tapping unmute here, if that works. There we go. Looks like it worked. All right, so it's 7 o'clock. It looks like all of us are here, although we are hybrid. But I'm calling the tonight's meeting of the Finance Committee to order, starting with the roll call vote, as we are hybrid. So let's see. Wait, is Mark still there?
Yeah.
Yes, Mark Zero.
Yes.
Ed Ross.
Here.
Joe McDonough.
Here.
Emily Sisson.
Here.
Marianne Downing.
Here.
Jeffrey Corum.
Here.
Andrew Kume. John Sullivan.
Here.
And Joe Carnahan here. So welcome everyone to the second of our 4 straight weeks of FinCom budget meetings. Last time we covered the school budget. Tonight we are covering the big projects, Killam and Recal, the ones that work for us. We have a couple other things on the agenda that are somewhat more routine Finance Committee business. We have a reserve transfer request, and 'tis the season to talk about the snow and ice deficit spending we did this year. And then next week we will start with the town budget and the financial forecast, and that's not going to finish in one night. So we will finish that and discuss the town meeting warrant articles, other town meeting warrant articles besides the budget on the 19th. It's only been a week since our last meeting. Yes.
Excuse me,
Oh,
can I call the Killam School Building Committee?
Oh, yes, right. You all probably have, and I'm checking. I'll check other things while you do that. Please go ahead.
Here.
Nancy? Here. John? John Coots there, I see him. Ed? I don't know if anybody else is on, but that's a quorum. Thank you.
Chris is online.
Chris? Maybe he's just not on you.
John is on.
I'm here. Thanks.
I call the permanent building committee / Recal building committee to order.
Please do.
Nancy Toomey,
Here.
John Coop,
Raise the hand on Zoom.
Nancy Zimlak,
Here.
Pat Tompkins here. We have a quorum. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. We have. I think we might have 2 select board members. I'll keep an eye out for a third.
Karen is on,
Yes.
I'm
Yep.
on Zoom.
I see you, and I see Chris. So if we see anybody else, and if you see anybody else, please feel free to interrupt me so that you can, call to order me.
Mark could join.
Exactly. I might expect Mark Doxer at some point, given the agenda for tonight. All right.
Okay, well, just let us know. Yep.
I think he said he'd be about 10 minutes late.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'll keep an eye out then. All right. Are there any other committees that need to call to order? No. All right. It's only been a week since our last meeting, so there's a placeholder for liaison reports. I don't imagine that people have a ton to report in 6 days, but
I can just give an update from last night's select board meeting. They had a discussion on the pickleball project where I shared the complete and utter shock that the project was proposed at 1.8, almost $1.9 million for 7 courts. And there were numerous questions about it, and I gathered that there's some value engineering that can be done to bring the cost down, along with possibly reduction of a pickleball court. Select board members were comparing costs in other communities. They were explaining about concrete versus asphalt courts, a lot of considerations, too much to tie up a report with. But one of the suggestions was, and maybe when the senior center folks speak tonight, is they felt that there was definite synergy between that project. And am I correct in saying it will save money if they're both done at the same time because of the drilling of putting in transformers for lights?
Yeah, it could.
It could, so I don't, to the extent that's a financial concern, it's something that is gonna go on the warrant, but not, there seems to be some range of price now on that, but that happened last night.
all right. Cool. Next. I realize usually the first bullet on the agenda is a token welcome one, but actually, and then public comment would come after that, but we don't have that. So I want to. Actually, are there other liaison reports? I think select board, there aren't a lot of committees besides select board that has met.
The school committee did meet. One issue that might come up in the future, the state approved a bill to allow cameras on school buses to catch people who pass. and that would need to be approved by the town, which would be a warrant article. And the superintendent was asked to look into what the costs would be and how that might affect, in that we don't actually have the school buses, we would be paying. You know, the bus company that we contract with might ask us to contribute something. I mean, it's, we don't know anything at this point, but it's just to put it on the, you know, on our radar as a possible expense that they might be looking for some money to add those cameras for the safety, obviously, for students.
John?
Eastern Gateway Exploratory Advisory Committee is going to have a public survey coming out pretty soon about what kind of development people would like to see down the Eastern Gateway, so be on the lookout for that.
I see we have one more select board member, so I think we have the vice chair on the phone. I don't think we have the chair, so Karen, do you want to call select board to order?
I'd love to call the select board to order.
Yeah. We have Mark in the room, and then Chris is on Zoom, just let me know.
And Karen Harris on Zoom. Great, thank you.
All right. Sorry for the interruption there, but I'm ready to take notes, but I can get my thing. All right, so yes, next, well, strictly speaking, previously on the agenda, but catching back up to next on what we're actually going to do is an opportunity for public comment. If anyone would like to speak to the Finance Committee about anything we're talking about tonight. No, been lots of good, I mean, there have been, to the credit of all projects being discussed, there have been a bunch of different forums, and there will be more. So, but, all right, well, in that case, let's keep moving it along. Next on the agenda is presentation and discussion on the Killam School project. Carla, are you starting out? Sounds good.
Joe, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, yes.
It looks like Laura Stella raised her hand for public comment.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I looked around the room and I didn't look at Zoom. Yes, please, Laura, go ahead. You appear to be unmuted, but we can't hear you.
I see her as muted. Oh, there she is.
You got me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, excellent. I had a general question because I did look at the packet before the meeting started, and I don't know when it's appropriate for this question, so you might put me on hold. I noticed in the Killam discussion, they talked about the debt reduction of the library and all those other projects, but also in the senior center discussion, that same debt reduction as in terms of how much it would lower the taxpayers' annual cost is, we can't be using both those numbers for both those projects, correct?
Maybe I should let,
Carla, do you want me to answer it?
yes, I think that's,
I mean, there's only one savings, you know, you're gonna get the savings once, you're not gonna get it of both projects, but they both wanna remind you that there's savings that you're receiving from debt exclusions being paid off.
But you're not duplicating those savings.
No, no.
Agreed?
I think they're just showing it on the slide just to remind you that these debt exclusions have fallen off and have provided some savings that will help buffer some of the increases you're gonna see.
So the average town person needs to understand if both of these pass, there's only one savings that applies.
Yes, that is true.
The savings are
Okay,
independent
thank you.
of
Okay.
I'm talking about the town project, that's it. If it's not on our agenda, I'm gonna try to let the town staff comment on it instead. So, all right, thank you. And apologies again for missing that on Zoom. Anyone else I missed? No. All right, now, please, go.
Thank you. Jackie, are you calling up the presentation?
I can if you would like.
Please.
You got it.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight, and thanks for hosting the Killam School Building Project. We're happy to give you an update. I will wait for Jackie to call it up, but I will start by saying that I won't go into in depth, because I know this group is a high-level group who knows a lot about the project. So I'm gonna focus more on the numbers, which is what I think you want to hear more of. Next one, please. And as you know, the MSBA has 8 different modules. Right now, we are in module number 4, the schematic design. As of February 10th, 2025, we submitted the schematic design to the MSBA. So we will wait about 2 months for them to review the project and come back to us. We are anticipating that we are on their agenda for the April 30th MSBA board meeting. At that point, they will give us the okay and show us that they will put forth the money for this project. And then we move into module 5, which is funding the project, where we have 180 days from that point to let the MSBA, put the money forward and show the MSBA that we have the funding for the project as well. Next slide, please. See, of course, mine doesn't work. So I've used the overall project schedule here just to separate out the 2 different funding portions of this project. In that intermittent orange dotted line, that circle there, that is the $2.2 million that was appropriated by town meeting on November 17th, 2022. It brought us through the feasibility study, the schematic design, and it brings us right up to the vote, which will be May 13th of 2025. After that, if the project continues, we will have that debt exclusion, which will fund the rest of the project. Next slide, please. Quick review of the building is 3 stories. We have included, you can see highlighted in green, is the Rise Preschool, the consolidated Rise Preschool under one roof. We were thrilled to hear from the MSBA that they would be participating in the 12 classrooms there. In the bluish purple color, you can see the other classrooms. So for the K through 5 classrooms. On the 2nd floor is the kindergarten 1st and 2nd, and then the big kids are on the 3rd floor. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders are on the 3rd floor. The gymnasium is on the 2nd floor, and the cafetorium is on our 1st floor. Next slide, Jack. This is and I'm going to show you a series of pictures that renderings from LBA, from our designer, that this one has been, but the other ones the committee hasn't even seen them, so I had to put them in. This is the proposed site plan. You can see there's a gray intermittent line, and it shows the outline of the existing school. The new school is more towards the Haverhill Street side of the site. It's a really tight site. You can see there's a lot of different areas for different levels of playgrounds. We have a field there, and one of the biggest features, I think the best features of this site, is the increase in amount of parking spaces for staff and for visitors. The thing I like the most about it is that during drop-off and pickup, a lot of the parents will be able to drive right on site. So we will take a lot of the congestion off of the roads. We have done an extensive review of all of the traffic and existing conditions now with traffic in the area. And how things will be reconfigured. They will have a really nice setup for pickup and drop off. Next slide, please. So we're at schematic design, which is only 30% complete. So this is a rendering of what one of our classroom neighborhoods could look like. So, and we visited multiple different schools, and this was a very similar look to a lot of these different schools. And how our educational plan works in Reading and is to have these classroom neighborhoods. So we've actually made our classrooms a little smaller, but spilled some of that space out into the hallways. So these little nooks and areas can be used for additional and different types of learning for our students. So this is something that we are really, really excited about as well. And the teachers and staff had a lot of input into this design too. Next slide, please. This, I don't know why, I just always like the cafeterias. This is the community cafetorium, and this is a real good depiction of a lot of the different ones that we have seen. It is a combination cafeteria and auditorium. Every one we've gone into have had those big, huge windows with a lot of light coming in, which I love. This is not a fancy place, right? It is a durable place. It is, the materials that are put in, they're real durable materials, and but it's a pleasant type of environment. So I love that picture. Next one, Jack. So the next few slides are just different views. These are aerial views of neighborhood views. So this one is from the west side, and you can see the how the traffic pattern is. There's an entry and an exit, and then the bus comes in from the Haverhill side street. So the buses have a separate entrance, but they leave through the same exit as the parents during drop-off. And then the next slide shows the east side. So this is this here is the back of the building. So this is from the Haverhill side of the building and what you would see there. Next slide, please. This is the view from Charles Street. This is the front of the building. It will, you have the field here. To the right is where the parking lot is as well. And this is a potential look of what the school would look like. The next stage for the designers is to get into all of the materials outside and the look and the windows and things like that. But I think our designers kind of walk around with us to all these buildings, and we kind of squeak in their ears and said, I like this, I don't like that. So, go ahead, Joe.
Just making sure that I understand the angle we're looking from. The playgrounds proposed are between the sort of, they're not shown here, but they would be between the ball field in the foreground and the school in the background?
Yes. Yep.
Then I do understand. Thanks.
Yep. And this is from from Charles Street. Next slide, please.
Oh, sorry. Ed Ross has his hand raised. Ed, did you like to ask a question?
Sure. Actually, Carl, this goes back a little bit, and you may want to tackle this, or you may plan to tackle this at some point later, but I was wondering if you plan to share how we are doing against the initial 2.2 million that was appropriated by town meeting. I think that'd be something interesting to share, and it's a good shout out to the work that the OPM and designers are doing.
Say that again, Ed.
How much is left of the
So I was wondering if you plan to share how we're doing against the initial 2.2 million as far as an expenditure perspective.
Sure.
I don't know if you were planning on doing that later or at some point. I just think that would be something good to share to the committee since it's an appropriation and it's finance related.
We are at the point right now where we are on schedule and under budget. We are under budget about $650,000 from our 2.2 million. That opportunity of going into the project or coming out of, coming to the end of this phase gives us an opportunity to to push along our design efforts. Not many districts have that opportunity because they use all the money that they have. So we have had a lot of internal conversations about it, and we are, we've had meetings with our designers and with our OPM, and we will, just as today, we're having a meeting on Monday for the committee to talk about that, to see if we would like our designer. So certainly during this phase of the project, it's kind of like a quiet time, and people are focused on the vote, right? We want the vote to be successful and to happen. The designer kind of goes on hold, so to speak, right? And they hold their people, and they're used to this. We feel like we have an opportunity to push our, the process of our design to a different level and gain back time. And I'll explain how that time kind of factors into real dollars. Like just for escalation costs, $333,000 a month. So, does that answer your question, Ed?
That's perfect. That's exactly where I wanted you to go, Carla. That's, and again, it's a huge, benefit and something that, folks should be aware of, and probably the only folks that really have heard about it today are the ones that are on the committee. But it's a true testament to you and town manager and superintendent, as far as the selection process of the OPM and the designer and the work that we've done with them. So thanks for sharing that.
And that 2.2 million is part of the overall project costs. And we have gotten reimbursement from the MSBA. That money is sitting in our treasury, and that will stay in our treasury. This additional design that we're talking about is not part of that money we have back in our treasury, if that makes any sense. That's been returned back. Great. And then this is the back of the school from the Haverhill Street side. I will just say that that fence will not look like that. It will be a more robust fence with more landscaping there for buffering, because those are play areas too. And that is set back quite a way too. Next slide, please. And this is the main entry view. Sort of, because it doesn't show the drive up. Next slide, Jackie. All right, now we get into the fun stuff. So just as a quick rundown of the building, this building has 3 floors. It's all electric, solar on the roof. I know there's been some discussions on both projects about a potential shelter in place, or I'm going to loosely call it emergency shelter. Not officially an emergency shelter, because that comes along with a lot of state requirements, and that would create a much more expensive output for us. So we're talking about a situation like what happened in Lowell and in Andover a few years ago, where there was a explosion, a gas explosion in residential areas, and people couldn't go home, right? Because they couldn't go home. So this, I'm going to call it a shelter in place, even though I don't have a term that I think adequately describes it. We need a place to put people, right? We have cots in this town that are set, we have them for emergency types of situations. So right now, the police chief and the fire chief have asked both projects to include this information. And if both projects go forward, I have heard, and don't quote me, I have heard Chief Burns say that the Center for Active Living was a more appropriate place for it, because the kids are in school during the day. And if it's not a townwide situation, we still have children at the Killam School. So if that is the case, I think, I can't speak for the committee, but I think that the committee may decide to pull that out, right? Because we wouldn't need it in 2 different schools. If it was to be in Killam, a few things. It would, we have a gas fire generator that will, we haven't determined yet whether it's going to be diesel or propane. it would service just the common areas in the building. So it would service the gymnasium, the cafeteria, and the hallways. It would not service the classrooms. So it would keep the temperatures and where they needed to be and keep the lights on. So just as a quick aside about that, because I know it has been discussed recently. To our HVAC system. These were our 5 options. We, as a committee, chose option number 3, which was half geothermal wells. So that's 44 geothermal wells. And then there's a dedicated outdoor air system that will be on the roof. But the reason why I'm bringing this up, Jackie, the next slide, please, is for financial reasons, to show you this option 3A. If you look at the second to last column, the Inflation Reduction Act incentive values. Those are listed there. Those played into the committee's decision on which option to choose. The MSBA program is it's such a good program, the way they bring you through this process, that, it was a unanimous decision by the time we got to this point. But at this point in time, we have been told that that those incentives are still in place. If, for whatever reason, if the federal government decides to pull those, we've kind of potentially mitigated our losses there. It was part of our decision, is what we did bring that into our decision-making process. Some things you can't, you can just try and plan for them, you just don't know what's gonna happen. Next one, please. This brings us to the interesting piece of the puzzle. So, we have, for both projects, and I don't need to talk for the recalc project, but we have coordinated together. So we have May 13th as the election, or the vote, this debt exclusion vote, because time means money. So we started to dig into our schedule as soon as we got on the MSBA's agenda for the 4:30 MSBA board meeting. We really kind of drilled down into our schedule. We met with the town clerk twice. The OPM really wanted to understand, so we could take her timelines and plug it right into our schedule. She has a lot of legal requirements and timelines that she needs to comply with. So at that point, we knew that recalc was going to town meeting for April 28th town meeting. And we decided, the schedule showed that we could hit that date. So Matt called us all together, both groups got together and discussed it and said, okay, this is a good thing. So I guess I'll be the one to talk about it. We have these meetings. In terms of Killam's perspective, I will tell you how this benefits the project and benefits the taxpayers. The date of going to April town meeting fits in with our schedule nicely. We will have given the MSBA about 2 months' time to approve our schematic design. On April 30th, when they meet, we are hopeful that, and have no doubt that we're going to get a thumbs up from them and they're going to come forth with their funding. The second night of town meeting is May 1st, and we are calling, or the select board is going to call a special town meeting within the town meeting, because we want to open it and close it for both projects. At that point in time, we have to start a 7-day clock. It's almost like a buyer's remorse. You have 7 days after town meeting to make sure that our vote was good and everybody's happy with it. So that brings us to our first Tuesday, which is May 13th, to go to the voters. So in terms of potential savings for cost, just talking escalation here, it's about $450,000. So if you assume a 4% escalation per year with a construction value of about 100 million, it translates to 333 per month. But for 6 weeks, that's $450,000. Another potential savings on bid day is we have a potential savings on bid day because the project schedule is more desirable. We will be, the most ideal time to put a contract in the contractor's hands is in March. So if we have a year's time for design, so if our design starts on May 14th and goes for a year, we're handing this off to the contractor in May of 2026. That situation Ed was asking about or wanted me to bring up about potentially saving time on the designer end and having the designer start working through some of their process would potentially save us another month. So we're slowly creeping towards that March date. Why is that beneficial? Because the contractor can start earthwork, concrete without winter conditions. And if we're lucky, he can get the steel up and he can get the sheathing going. So that's less risk for the contractor, hopefully translating to lower bid costs. And then hopefully we will, kind of mitigate winter conditions there as well. And then for number 5, we currently have 2 modulars on the site. And those modulars are going to be moved to a permanent location at the high school. So what we're going to do is take those first graders out of those modulars at the end of this year and put 2 RISE classrooms in there and move it to the high school right outside of RISE. That will be a permanent location, and we will be able to use those modulars after the construction's done and we move RISE into Killam. We'll be able to use those for a lot of our innovation pathways. So Joe Huggins has this completely set up like down to the day. So as soon as we achieve a favorable vote, he's able to a week later award that contract. So we could get those modulars moved and out of the way for construction. Emily?
The cost to move the modulars, where does that come from?
So part of our swings, we have swing space contingencies built into the price. It has come from that $2.2 million, the design portion of it. We use GNAP, our in-home doctor, is that what we call it? House doctor, to design that for us. And then the price for moving them will come out of our project costs.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Next slide, Jackie. What are the risks? The risks is that we have practically eliminated a 35-day wait time that it's a Mass General law, and it is the town clerk needs to receive the exact wording for an election to go on the ballot. So we are submitting that to Laura early. So we have cut that back. So it translates, because of other things as well, to 37 days. So we've cut that back. So if this doesn't pass if neither project passes town meeting, we are still having an election on May 13th. And that vote is valid vote. So potentially we could lose the $20,000 to $30,000 for that vote.
Question about that, would it be possible to call a special town meeting after the May 13th vote? If suppose, I mean, in the circumstances where the town meeting votes in the negative and the May 13th voters vote in the positive,
Yeah.
could we call a special town meeting at that point to say, hey, town meeting, and we know you said no, but the voters just said yes, you wanna authorize this borrowing now?
I'm thinking that probably would be a prudent thing to do.
Okay.
And obviously we
option.
would be getting town council in on it.
Yeah, right.
So what happens if they don't approve the borrowing?
If who doesn't?
The town,
Town meeting? It goes, we're having an election.
An election has been called. So.
Can't cancel it.
hasn't been called yet.
If town meeting votes,
Select board, the select board voted to call an election?
Not
yet. Okay. But it's going to be called before, yes, election is being called.
I'm not sure, if town meeting votes no, and then we still go to the voters, and they say yes, then what happens? Do we get the money, do we have the money for the project, or it has to go
Not
back
unless
to?
town meeting authorizes the
So
borrowing.
the vote,
That's what
by
I'm
the
saying.
vote stand means the vote happens, not that the results of the vote.
I think that, and who am I? But I think that that wouldn't be a good faith effort in the minds of the MSBA, right? If town meeting said one thing and the voters said another, the MSBA is gonna say, you guys gotta get your act together. So I wouldn't view that as the project is moving forward.
Okay. So by the vote.
But that's just my opinion.
By the vote will stand means the vote happens, not that the vote.
I don't think
It's the
can
final
vote
say.
without town meeting.
No, but you'd have to go back to town meeting, and
That's
I
what
would
I'm
think if
saying.
you
Go back
got
to town
if you got a popular vote of the residents of yes and a no from town meeting, I
Yeah.
think that tells town meeting the residents want it, I would think that'd be an easier vote to turn.
Strictly speaking, if town meeting voted no, that process that Carl alluded to by which the voters can petition and overturn town meeting via referendum, we could vote twice. Laura Gem would never forgive the town, but strictly speaking, I believe that if the voters want this, the voters will get it, even if they have to overrule town meeting to do it via petition.
The key, excuse me for a second,
Yeah.
the key to this whole process too is once town, on April 30th, we have 180 days to put up the money, so
Secure
to
the
speak.
funding, yeah.
So that's gonna be, I'll talk, what if you get the full no path? Regardless of what town meeting says, voters say no once, voters say no twice. And I hope it doesn't come to that without advocating, I just think that's not, you'd be giving up the chance for reimbursement. Like, what is the plan?
So that's above my pay grade. But,
Okay.
And that's part of my last slide. We, as a town, have to decide what to do with that school. So in order to bring that school up to code, keep the existing one-story building in all its glory, bring it up to code, that's $62 million. So we'll have $62 million of an existing school just brought up to code, or you can have, $87 million and have a brand new school
So
inside.
doing nothing is not a path forward.
It is a path forward, it may not be the optimal path forward in terms of
Yeah.
taxes.
Cheaper, right?
Right.
And can I just ask another question that maybe, especially with the superintendent being here? I see raised in the community contentions that this school doesn't have to be this big because district enrollment is going down, blah, blah, blah. And I've kind of, I was double checking numbers here, and actually Killam is pretty stable, other than, before 2015-ish, when everything was higher. And the Killam is stable, Rise is going up. The district, is down from 10 years ago, but kind of stable. So apart from enrollment, there still seems to be some people saying, well, the school doesn't need to be this big. It doesn't all need to be there. And I know you've given good reasons, but enrollment-wise, can maybe the superintendent or somebody just speak to what you're projecting? Because I think there's a contingent that keeps thinking, no, enrollment's going down, we don't need this, we can just redistrict. And look, there's still a dispute, I hear, about the rationale, and I don't agree with that, but I'd just like to hear it from you, that no, it is not dropping, or maybe we can't use classrooms the way I try to explain to people, we use classrooms differently, but maybe just to hear from you.
You want me to come up or say?
You or Carla or whoever can
Can I
explain.
give a couple of things first?
Yeah.
So the study, the enrollment study done by GNAP, right, that helped us get into the feasibility phase, or the SOI, the statement of intent phase. That GNAP study showed that our average school, our average elementary school was 30 to 50% too small, right? And we know that Killam is too small. When you're doing work in closets and your closets are in the hallway, your school's too small. Killam is about 50% bigger than the existing Killam. And so it doesn't mean it's an overly huge school. It means that the existing school is half the size that it should be per the MSBA guidelines. In terms of costs for adding the, we looked at buildings of just 4 classrooms of RISE existing, well, 2 classrooms existing plus 2 for expansion as our small building. And then we had a larger building, we had 12 classrooms, right? That difference in cost there, including the reimbursement from MSBA, our cost as a town, 8.8 million to 12 million. That is the range. So bringing RISE in for 8.8 million to 12 million, some people still may say that's too much for what it does for the rest of our school district and for our high school, which is our flagship, which, you know, promulgates what our tax base is and how wonderful our town is. That's the cost, that's the opportunity cost.
So just so I'm understanding what you started to say though, because there's MSBA standards, we would not be allowed to build an undersized school because MSBA, for our proposal, we have to meet what they view as sufficient class size standards. So we couldn't propose something that was too small.
No, we're working in we have to follow.
Right, so that's kind of the key thing, because then the people will say, oh, you know, when in the 70s, Killam had 500 kids, and it's like.
I can tell you that Killam is not over and above.
Yeah.
You ask the designer, you ask the OPM, one word to describe Reading residents, he's gonna say frugal. They're both gonna say frugal.
Yeah, but I think it's important, I think will be important, as you explain this maybe in the April 2nd hearing, to say, you know, we can't propose this smaller and even be in the MSBA queue.
Right.
Because they want things to meet their standards. Okay.
Yeah, just a couple things to build off of that too. So we had a recent demographic study done in the community as well from Jerome McKibben, an outside demographer. So our current enrollment for K to 5 is 1,776 students. The projection goes up actually, the next 2 years are supposed to be relatively level with 1775, 1774. And then in 26, 27, we're supposed to jump to 1847.
Oh, wow.
And then continue up to
So another bubble,
1866,
yeah.
1883, 1901, 1919, and 1932. So the projections, again, you can look at the McKibben demographic study and sort of how they're projecting out, particularly on years where we don't have like birth data. So we feel a little bit better about the 26, 27, 27, 28 data because it's actual based on actual births instead of projected births. But that, for us, you look out to where it went out to 2032, 2021, or 2031, 2032, we're looking at over 150 student increase. And I think for Carla, kind of expressing too that our schools are already undersized is one piece, right? So there's not really much space to absorb this. Second, we also see a continued increase in the amount of students with complex special needs, some of our English learners, some of our students who need additional supports, and us need to find spaces in the buildings as well. Like the needs of our students are very different than they were 10, 20, 30 years ago, and we have to be able to have space to be able to meet those students' needs. I'll go even further, as the district has asked us as the school committee, the committee to be responsible of invest to save models. For example, like building out our in-district LEAD program. If we build out a strong LEAD program, we think that we can better service students in district than sort of out of district, which is important for us moving forward from to be able to maintain sort of the services that we provide students. So even those type of opportunities to build those programs up, we need space. So I think that this opens up space in several of our other schools, and we think would allow us to absorb what is going to be projected enrollment increase in the years to come, where we don't have to do something else in 4, 5, 6 years. Now, I will hit on the RISE piece as well. So we know that currently RISE has 10 classrooms. We are projecting, again, given some of the new laws, some of the new child fine laws, some of our early interventions, that we're going to pick up more students in the next couple of years. We're going to be eligible for RISE services. We know we need to have space, and we anticipate that having additional classrooms will be necessary. That brings us up to that sort of 12 classrooms. That doesn't even address the wait list and us wanting to sort of meet the needs of other families. Given that this is something that would be, those classrooms are eligible for reimbursement from MSBA, we think that that's obviously we were really encouraged when we got that information because we feel this is a chance to meet what is a growing space need for our RISE students and then also meet what we know is a growing programmatic need at the high school level too. So I think at this point, if we, given the, kind of where our community needs to go with enrollment, where our community is going with programming, that it is forward thinking for us to try to, maximize as much space as we possibly can. I know Mike Carroll's on the call, and I don't know if we want to, Mike, jump.
And he has, as a matter of fact, he has a hand up. So
Yeah,
as soon as you were done, I was gonna
glad you're
call him.
clearing up the myth that seems to be
I
circulating.
want to tee him up on a couple of things, but Mike, I think, can you confirm sort of what my impression is that we haven't really built much extra space in this building, right? I think that we have tried to go by as small of a building as we could, given the communities. And Mike also says that he wanted to address sort of what happens if town meeting votes no, but then the voters vote yes, so.
Yes, absolutely, Tom, thank you. So specific to the size of the building, I will just let you know that we are working to build a building that is educationally appropriate and actually allowing the educational program to define the spaces needed. We take that along with the MSBA standards, and I will let you know that the MSBA standards, they're constantly reviewing these, constantly evaluating them, and making slight adjustments as they need to, but they're the standards that are used throughout the state. And I will just let you know that while they are sufficient to do teaching and to do all the things that the educators need, they are not robust, they are not excessive, if you will. In fact, you'll often find if we talk to facilities and things like that, they really would wish they had more storage spaces, more things like that, So I guess what I'm saying from that perspective is we're building what we need, we're building to match the educational program, and the MSBA standards really are, again, sufficient to do what we need, but certainly not overboard, not robust. They are not excessive, I think is the correct word for that. And then specific to the previous question on the town vote, if the town meeting did not approve it, the vote moves forward. If the vote approves it, I would say that the first thing that we would recommend is to get a special town meeting as quickly as possible to reconvene. I think very similar to what Carla was saying, and we can support that. We do have the 120-day time window of opportunity to do that. There is always a possibility to petition the MSBA for an extension, things of that nature. They always want to work with us. They always want to make sure that they're giving us the best opportunities to succeed, but it's not the best. The plan shouldn't be that we're going to be asking for extensions and things like that. That's the backup plan.
Thanks, Mike.
Hopefully, yes.
Joe.
So, Color, on your point about the 62 million, just to bring it up to code, and I don't want to go there, but just for transparency, like what is that and what would be the timeline? Like to bring, like what are the things that would be in that number? Like,
So if you start touching a building construction-wise, right, and you're not up to code, you have to bring that whole building up to code, right? So you would start with our we have foundation issues. We have our fire suppression system, which is inadequate. It's just not energy efficient. The building's not energy efficient. It has groundwater leakage coming in. As a minimum, those things would have to happen. I mean, that the building has been really well maintained, but it's just at its end of its useful life. And
Plus the lead pipes.
Oh, forgot the bonus.
Right.
Yeah,
And the lack of ADA.
yeah, that's right. Thank you.
And Carl, I just, what that wouldn't address when we've gone through is some of the educational concerns that we have around the current space, the need for spaces that Joe and his team have done an amazing job converting some spaces that were previously used for closets or storage that are now used for different purposes. And I think that would not address some of those concerns from an educational perspective. It would be pure compliance.
Carl, if I could just expand, just like you just said and Tom just said, that $60 million gets you code compliant building, but it doesn't get you any really improvements as far as educational spaces. It doesn't address all the root issues that are in that building other than the code compliance.
Thanks, Mike. So, it's okay.
I think we're good, yeah, thank you.
If we move on to the project costs, I do want to just quickly say that MSBA has a base rate incentive program, and they calculate what your percentage is. Ours is a little over 51%. That is 51% of eligible costs, not the whole kit and caboodle, right? So, and they assign points. You're allowed to get 18.5 points. And part of this is based on how wealthy the town is, how well you maintain your facilities. I will tell you that, and I'm gonna do a shout out to facilities. Because of the points we got from facilities and how well we maintain our buildings, that translates to $1.4 million reimbursement from the MSBA, just because we have a good facilities department. And then there's other things, and in terms of energy efficiency, well, I mean, those are huge numbers, and I always think that people want to hear stuff like this too. And Joe's paying me under the table, so. In terms of energy efficiency, there's 4 points available, and we're getting all 4 points for that, just to kind of get by that. This is pretty self-explanatory in terms of project costs. You know, for almost $42.6 million grant from MSBA. I will also just shout out, because I think we forget these things sometimes, at the MSBA's October 24th, 2023 board meeting, they raised their per square foot cost that they would pay from $393 per square foot to $550. So that was huge for us. Also, in terms of site costs, they raised that to $55. So it comes out to $605 of square foot costs, which was a huge gain for us. It's one of the things that kind of sunk Stoneham High School, because they may have gotten a benefit from that. And then I think everybody's had time to look at, we did take on and show both projects and the what's coming off the tax rolls. And we did this in terms of how much savings how much it would cost per $100,000 of assessed home value. Next slide, please. And then the next example is just the average home example. The average home in Reading is $890,000. Everybody can read it, I don't have to. You know, over it's $734. The project would add that to the average home values tax bill for the year. If we took off all of that debt coming off, it would net out to about $347 as a tax increase.
So I think, if I could, this is, I think, what the speaker comment. There's a similar slide for this, for the retail building, where it says there's a decrease in our taxes if we fund that one, because they're also subtracting off. That one does at least have a little footnote at the bottom that says excluding other projects, whereas this slide does not say, oh, by the way, that increase is only if we don't do anything else.
So you're just gonna add them.
Yeah, that's where we see the double subtraction.
Because we're doing our job trying to promote our own project.
Right, so each project
Promoting the project, yeah, but the savings only comes once.
Yeah.
Okay, we can do the math as a, you know, service to our fellow residents and add the two numbers and subtract the other.
Yeah. So we need one more slide at the end that says if we do both,
yeah,
then subtract off once for what's coming off.
Mark and I are gonna arm wrestle after.
Yeah.
Who gets to take the credit?
Yeah, and just the other thing, just for consistency, like apples to apples, I think the school is at 20 years, right?
Thank you. Yes.
An assumed rate, you know, just to make it so
Yeah, thank
comparable,
you.
so. Yeah.
Next slide, Jackie. I put this in with numbers that aren't current, but just to bring us back to the question which was kind of already answered. What happens if the vote doesn't pass on May 13th? We have 180 days from April 30th to good faith show funding to the MSBA. We could petition the MSBA and ask them if we can go back to the voters with the same exact design. If it fails for the second time, I put this up here just to show that option A, which was the code upgrade of $61 million. And the MSBA makes you go through this process of code upgrade and then a renovation addition and then new buildings. And I think that's next slide, Jackie. Oh, maybe not. This is just a little bit of project milestones. Design, development will take about a year. Possibly we can cut that back a little bit. Construction's 2 years, and then demolition and site work is another year.
Mary Ann,
Did someone else have their hand up?
you're the first one I
I
saw.
forget if you addressed this, and maybe it's unpredictable. This is kind of a question for anyone who's building it. If tariffs or those kinds of things hold, do we have an estimate of how much building materials are non-domestic? Like that could come from Canada or Mexico that would go into this project? And this question would also apply to recalc. Do we know if whether it's steel or lumber?
So my flip answer will be that we have to start producing everything in the United States, and we have 1 year to do that. I don't, that's above my pay grade.
Yeah, I know.
Look, he's already up.
But they may know how much, what percent of the materials are domestic
We
that
have
go into these projects.
We have contingencies and stuff, but.
Carla, I would say that we don't necessarily have a defined specific quantity of materials that are domestic or foreign. We have an open bid policy, so it is a competitively bid project. That being said, we do try to account for contingencies for both escalation and design. So as we're going through and finishing the design, we have contingencies built in for that. We have contingencies built in for escalation. I will say that COVID has been challenging with that. So the contingencies tend to be a little bit higher more recently. And I think that I would hope that we have it covered. I can't guarantee it because I don't know where the tariff will be a year from now. But I would say with where we're at right now and what we're seeing right now, I feel pretty comfortable that we can manage within the budget with what we have.
Thank you.
Ed has a hand up.
Thanks, Joe. Carla, this may be something else for you or for Mike or Tom to be able to speak to. But I also, to some of the questions that were asked about, the kind of the scope of the school and requirements. I do think it's worth highlighting, and I know you did it on one slide, that it's not like the committee chose the top of the line for every aspect of the project. Speaking specifically about HVAC. And that was kind of a real collaboration from the building committees and the town staff, facilities, etc. But then also from a solar perspective, it's not like we took every kind of top of the line choice, and that's what's kind of folded into the project. So I just think that that's something else we want to make sure that folks know, is that it's we have adhered to that frugality that I think you mentioned at the outset.
Other questions from the committee? Joe.
I'll ask a couple of this. For like operating costs, like we're obviously picking up square footage, but is there any estimates, like is that like another janitor, or I don't know. I have no idea how that works, but.
We will, this building has new type of technology that we will need that type of expertise on. So, and I've gone to seminars at other schools and they've talked about that and how to do that. Do you do that in-house or do you bring in that expertise? So, we have been talking about that and kind of how to mitigate that. We have a very small facilities group for the amount of buildings that we have in our town. And so we will need to bring that expertise on board as well.
Do you have any sense like how big that could be? Like, is it like another 50, 100,000 a year, or is it?
So I will tell you that for Mass Save, if we were not under RMLD and all that, for Mass Save, they will actually give you, if you petition them for it. I was talking to a district, I think it was Belmont, that had petitioned for the third year in a row of $150,000 grant through Mass Save. We don't have that opportunity where they will have they will pay for an energy person. And you can ask for that amount for up to 3 years. We do not have that. So we will have to figure out how to be able to, the systems we've selected too, right? It's a lot of like a computer system too that needs to be monitored. So you can educate somebody to do that. You can bring in those expertise. So we will need that. Whether it will be a full-time person or not, I have no idea. But that's something we definitely have been talking about as well.
And like at this stage, are we looking at like, I call it like warranties or protection, not just for the roof, but like, for some of the other equipment and things that we're putting in?
Yes.
But is that cost like embedded like in these numbers, or?
We will, we have been talking about it, and other districts have hired a specialized consultant who's a tax and they're IRA experts to help you. You don't just, do your taxes and then, check off all the IRA things. You have to like apply for these grants at different times during our process. So if the vote, we get a positive vote, that is something we'll be bringing on board right away, because that person can help us. And we may modify our design a little bit to get those incentives moving forward.
Okay.
So there are specialized specific people who actually do that type of work.
But do we plan to pick up like any like maintenance cost or?
Todd Tompkins, chair of the permanent building committee. The original question about warranties, roof warranties, equipment warranties, all the equipment, everything, the entire building will come with like a 1-year labor and material warranty on everything. And then all the manufacturer's warranties will matriculate to the town, whether it's a 20-year material warranty on carpet, 20-year warranty on the roof, whatever that is, that's all part of the, baked into that price. There's no special.
So we don't have to buy up. I'm just thinking of like the residential costs.
No.
We're not buying up additional contract, or we don't think we need to.
No.
Okay, thanks.
The only I'll add on that too is just in terms of staffing potential shifts, we would need 2 additional preschool teachers, but that would be generally covered through our tuition payments for the RISE program. So that wouldn't be as much of we'd have some more control over that. We would need to hire 1 additional teacher for a science, technology, engineering teacher. There's a science, technology, engineering room. As you look at the floor plans, we would need to have a designated staff member for that room, and that's part of our commitment in the documents that we've submitted to MSBA. Which is probably a good thing anyways, in sort of where we are in education. We really see it as just 1 staff member in terms of school operating budget. I know Joe maybe mentioned custodial.
Definitely for Killam, we're gonna be needing more custodial staff. And then on the maintenance, as far as the core facilities budget, we are gonna be adding, we're very custody right now with the amount of people we have covering over 1 million square feet. So I would imagine we would be adding more technicians. And to what Carla was speaking about, I think what she's talking about is a sustainability manager, which sometimes do hire out for, and they're funded through grants and they go after different opportunities. But as far as operating the building on a day-to-day basis with the energy management system, the building operating system, whatever you want to call it, we have the know-how to do that. We don't need to bring anybody in for that. But we will be increasing of course, our utility costs are going to go up because it's full electric. Our maintenance contracts, we're gonna have to expand on those, and so we are gonna be, especially with both projects coming on, so there is gonna be a shift going forward.
Okay, but it's too early to understand like what those
Yeah,
amounts are.
and we're
so-
looking at numbers right now. I mean, for a building that size, where we kind of know what the right size as far as custodial and maintenance staffing goes.
Great, okay, yeah, thank you.
I think at one of like the early public forums, there was talking about improving sidewalks around the school if we're getting some of the traffic away from off of Charles Street. Is that included in any of the plans here, or is that for further down the road?
You're not asking for that to happen before the project, during,
Is that part of the project?
oh, so there, that's a great question. There is a plan set for how the traffic flow is going to go and where parking is gonna be. And Mike, maybe you can answer this. I would guess and say that the sidewalks are right abutting the school are part of the project, but anything additional to that wouldn't be?
I think that's the way we are currently planning it, Carla, and anything that's immediately adjacent is within the project. There's other considerations that the traffic engineer has provided as options that the town may consider to do outside the project.
Okay, but that's not, so that's a separate funding
Right.
down the line somewhere. Okay, and then with the additional parking at the school, just looking at the maps, like, where's all the snow going when we have to plow this big parking?
We're gonna bring big blow dryers and
Geothermal snow melters?
Flamethrowers.
You know what, I am gonna tell you the one thing I do remember, they were talking about like how wide that area is, like the driveway in. We used to do. It's like, I'm not gonna say 40 feet, it's very wide, so this could be deceiving.
Carla, as far as the snow, that's actually part of the requirement for the designer to have that as consideration, so they will have areas defined for where the snow will go.
You're not gonna build a sledding hill, Carla? For the kids at recess?
But you can put right there. They do this, they do come there. If you haven't had it.
Glad I grew up when.
Do we have other, yes, please.
Since we have Chris on the, in here, so will the town need to upgrade any of the infrastructure around the school? Like the water lines, I don't know, any of the, that will tie in or not really?
I really haven't been part of the conversations. Has that been discussed, as far as, you know, upgrading water lines and so forth? And
You hear that, Mike?
That's more on my question.
I mean,
Yeah, my understanding right now, I don't think there's been any discussion that we need to do any upgrades in the road of utilities. We've looked at the existing utilities, and we're basing our work off of those utilities. I don't believe we've done a hydrant flow test yet, but what that would potentially do is talk about a fire pump in the building or not necessarily upgrading something outside the property lines.
Sorry, Cal, one more, I'll let you go on. On the, maybe this should be a question for Sharon, but is the 20-year assumption, is that what you're recommending for this project, or, I know that's what you use it as an example, but.
Sharon was looking at them, and she said she decides with that town accountant.
Right.
Yeah.
The treasurer.
Okay, because you showed different, like, or she did, okay.
They show different years because they want to see the impact. So the higher the years you get, the more interest you pay. The lower the years, less interest you pay.
Oh, yeah.
Also, the burden on the taxes and also on the budget that will pay for it is less. So it's a balancing act.
Yeah, and we have a upward sloping yield curve now, going out longer is gonna hurt you too, so it's better to do the 20-year, at least as of today.
It's a balance, yeah, if you can afford it, but they will add more taxes, so, or you pay less
Short
interest.
term.
Yeah.
We'll pay less than long term.
The other thing is that all of our buildings will be 20 years older, 20 years. So
Yep.
Sharon, as soon as you left, Joe had a question about the borrowing term. The 20-year term versus other
How
possible
did we arrive at that?
schedules.
Is that the question?
Right now, is that the recommendation for this project?
It
or-
is, and it's based on just looking at how much more interest goes, if you go from 20 to 25 years, it's $20 million more interest, and it saves that average home maybe $61 a year. If it was me, I'd rather stretch and pay that extra 61 and make it go away 5 years. And then when you look at the 30, which is what I thought we would be, almost doubles the cost of the project, because $83 million or $83.7 million of interest. And the difference is only $23 for the average taxpayer from 25 years. So it's like, I feel like the numbers seem to point that 20 is the right choice.
Yep.
At least to me. I don't think the savings is significant.
I'm good with that. I was just trying to,
Yeah.
I saw the different schedules and was trying to figure out if we were.
And when you see a project like this, you default, oh, it's gotta be 30, I can't imagine we could afford anything else, and then when you see the actual numbers break down, you see how much,
Yeah,
how
the
the
amount of
interest
interest.
accumulates, you say, this doesn't make sense. I don't wanna spend excessively on interest if we can afford to stretch just a little bit more and bring it down.
Actually, this is a question, because I've heard when people were in conversations about the period, I've heard someone say, finance committee will be deciding on that. I was like, oh, really?
I think
and
it's a
so-
treasurer function.
Okay, yes, it's not,
But obviously, if I'm building the budget and the treasurer, we have to be in line with
Yeah.
each other. But I think we're always interested to hear what FinCom has to say, what residents have to say. If residents were saying, we can't afford that number that you're putting out there, then that feedback is necessary before we make any kind of definitive borrowing at that space.
It feels like, if you're talking just things like $20, $60, that's very different than $200, $300, which
It's
I
just not
think is enough to swing people more than, and it's maybe from my position, maybe there are people from $20 to $50 matters, but I just feel like psychologically, like something under $50 looks less impactful over a year.
And then one would think that in that time frame, another project may develop that might need funding. And so the sooner you pay off this debt, the sooner you have that bandwidth to take something else on.
So I'm gonna ask, are there other projects that we can kind of foresee down the line within the next 20 years?
Of this size, not that I know of. I mean,
Like, are there,
we're gonna do a facilities master plan to kind of see the condition of all the buildings and recommendations of what needs to be done, and that might highlight to us what building, if any, in the future might need to be looked at.
okay.
No, I was going to say one other thing in the, back on the subject of tax burden and the 2050 sorts of numbers. I know that we are talking like there are certainly residents for whom $50 would matter. They don't own the mean valued house. They presumably rent or own something less expensive, so the burden would be less. So that's something you meant. Also, one thing I asked, I had an email exchange with Carla about means and medians, because I understand the standard from Sharon is to use the mean, but a few expensive houses make the mean larger than the median. So it's accurate to say that half of single family homeowners would pay less than the average that we're describing here, by a little bit. I think it's at 840,000 versus 890,000.
Well, anything less due to this project, there's still going to be home value
for all
increase,
the right, but I mean
Yeah, that and DLS, they prefer us to use the average.
yes, okay, right.
So that's what guides our.
That's fine, but DLS can't change the fact that half of houses cost less than the median.
Which would be good to know, for
Exactly.
people to know that even though we're quoting an average, that
Right, it's
50% are
even-
gonna be below
Are going to
that.
be
That's a
more
very
than
fair
more than 50% are
comment.
below the mean. Good to know. We're not. The average is not dragged down by a few very cheap houses. I don't even know how that would work. The average is
Yeah.
dragged up by a few expensive houses.
It's just amazing how much the property values have gone up since I quoted it in 2022. I think it was, average home was 670 and now it's 890, so property values.
Is that why the cost per home is less? Because I was looking at the numbers, October 19th, 2022, you gave to FinCom, and it was a project less than this, but it was more per home. And is it because the tax base is
The
bigger?
interest rate at the time was like a 5% coupon, so when I was doing that that analysis, I was assuming 120 million. I was assuming the lowest possible MSBA reimbursement at like 30%. And it somehow miraculously came out very close. But
Yeah, it was like
it was
88 then
high,
versus
it was higher
73
because
now.
it was a higher interest rate.
Oh, okay.
Higher interest rate. So like if you look at the
Interest rates
20,
are higher now.
and this isn't set in stone, this is like, we know we're very close to starting to borrow, and this is what they're projecting for us at our Hilltop Securities. But back then, 5% coupon rates were the going thing. So at the time we were asking was part of it, like the interest rates were starting to go up, and that we were starting to see more 5% coupon rates. Now, keep in mind, we get premiums for, we get a lower rate because we're a AAA bond community, but they still need to package for resale, and 5% was what they were doing at the time. Now they're quoting us at 4%, so.
Okay, so
that
that's not, it
interest
doesn't have
makes
to do with the size of the tax base being higher because home values are higher.
No.
So
I mean,
it's
it's all
different.
kind of
The
breaking
rate's
down by
different.
price per 100,000 and all that. All that's the same. It's that when they did that projection for me, they were very conservative with the 5% now.
I do understand what you're saying, Marianne, though. Like
I had the
there are
numbers up
more,
here 'cause I was looking at it.
there are more hundreds of thousands of home value in this town than there were 2 years ago, as you're saying.
Yeah, like, yeah, see, the numbers were like this is from 2 years ago, it was 80 for $120 million of debt, and it was that coupon rate, it was 88 per thousand, and now it's like 73 per thousand, so it just was, I was like, wow, I don't know why in my head I thought the interest rates are worse now than they were in 2022, but maybe
Well, by
That's
late,
when I
by
think
late,
it started. Yeah,
by
that's
late,
when they started to go up.
beginning and end of 2022 were day and night as far as
that's what, that's the year when it
That
all
was late
changed.
2022.
Yeah,
But
okay.
but the numbers still stayed somewhere close to the range that we were quoted, so that's at least
Yeah.
something.
It's quite, yeah. Some happy coincidences here. I know you put a lot of, we demanded that estimate from you, you know.
Like, I don't even know
and-
anything
and you're
about the
like-
building, let me just guess.
Right. And unfortunately, it's gonna get harder for you to avoid us asking you for that in the future because you turned out to be completely correct within like $1 million in terms of the town share, which is,
I was trying to give worst case scenario and it came up very close.
sigh, but yes, okay. All right, are there other questions about this? About Killam? All right, thank you, Carla, very much for coming and
Thank
presenting.
you.
Thank you for everyone for various committees. Does the Killam School Building Committee need to adjourn?
Adjourn the Killam School Building Committee. Pat?
Yes, here.
Nancy?
Yes.
John?
Maybe
John
Chris, but he's still here, select board.
He may be gone.
I see Chris on Zoom, I see John Coote on Zoom.
And I see John, he's now coming back to his computer,
Okay.
and Ed's still sitting there.
Sorry, Ed.
Yeah. Ed, we're looking for people to vote to adjourn.
But then he's still gonna be here for FinCom.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
I might just leave both then.
No, Ed, you're stuck with
I'll
this, Ed.
I'll stay.
But,
Said
yes,
yes to me.
Carla was trying to get a vote together to adjourn. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Ed.
We're
Okay.
technically not adjourned, because there's still 5 here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll adjourn when it's over.
Oh, okay. All right, so I didn't know if some people were dropping off the call. If everyone's staying, great. Carry on. Or if quorum is staying. All right. Well, okay. So let's get back to the agenda. So next is our presentation and discussion for the Reading Center for Active Living project.
Great. Hello, everyone. Brian. I don't think I've been for you, so I'm Brian Dermotka with Turner & Townsend Hearing, Owner's Project Manager. Here to give an update on the ReCal project. And I think the last update was back in October, so a lot has happened since then. And I'll try to be really brief here on this presentation so that we can have plenty of time for questions. Share this here and see if this works. So I don't know how familiar you are with the project. I'll touch on kind of a few highlights, and then, like I said, happy to answer more questions in detail about any of the topics. So this project has been in development for quite a while. So let's see, how do I get to the next slide now?
I think Jackie.
You are.
There we go. 10 years, a number of studies were conducted. We had the recalc committee that was active for, I believe 3 years. A lot of engagement with the public on what was needed and how they envisioned this project moving forward. What it's really about is addressing changes in the demographics. There's a growing population of the 60-plus community that's projected to reach 30% by 2030. So this project is really about addressing those needs. And within that age span of the 60-plus, you really have a lot of differences in what people need. You know, you have the younger age groups that are still very active. You have older age groups that need more support services. So the plan is to address all those needs through these programmatic changes. Unfortunately, the program doesn't really work in the existing building. There are a number of problems. I won't go through all of them here. There are problems with the facility itself, and I think the biggest thing is just there's a lack of space. So there are long wait lists for a lot of the programs that are offered, and there's a shortage of programs that are currently meeting the needs of the community, or not meeting the needs of the community, I should say. So all of that really expands into having a lot more programs that are needed to support this growing segment of the population. So as part of this project, a lot of work has been done on figuring out how do we best move forward. Overall, there were 6 different sites that were considered. The 3 most desirable sites were then intensely studied to figure out what's best for this project. And of the 3 sites, they were evaluated by the recalc committee, also by the Council on Aging. The architect did a review. As your OPM, we also did a review. And all of those sites were reviewed by the Permanent Building Committee. And then together with the select board, unanimous decisions were made that the Simons Way location was the best site. So that's kind of what moved us in that direction. And there's a lot of good reason for that. And I'll talk a little bit more at the site when we get into the design part. But going through this process, there was also a vision statement, a mission statement that were created. So Elder and Human Services, together with Veteran Services and Recreation, and also the Council on Aging, really worked together to envision what this space is supposed to be. And it's really a place that's going to foster the health and wellness of the community by promoting social interaction and creating a place that is not only for the 60-plus group, but really is open to all ages, so kind of intergenerational meeting place, and can serve the needs of these various groups. Also, this came up as we went through this process. This is kind of an interesting thing, something that you might want to read up on later. It was a study that was put out by the Surgeon General, and it was an advisory about the issues that address social isolation within the community. And it's interesting because it talks about how it not only affects individuals, but it affects the community at large. In fact, lowering academic achievement, having a worse performance at work, and even having significant economic impacts on not only the individuals, but the community as a whole. So that was kind of an interesting point of reference because it really applies to this project as we move throughout it. You can see on the graph there on the left, they actually highlight this social isolation as more damaging than a lot of the vices that we commonly know of, like smoking and excessive drinking, obesity, things like that. And the solution from this report was to design an environment that promotes a social connection, and that's kind of what that ReCal project is about. So here we can see the site that was selected. It's really being envisioned as a community resource area as a whole, because there are a lot of programs in that location already that the town has. You have the Burbank Ice Arena, you have existing athletic fields just off the image on the top there. You can see the Center for Active Living in the lower left-hand corner. And then some pickleball courts that are proposed, which I think was mentioned earlier this evening. That's actually a separate project, but that's slated to be in that area as well. And then there's also a wilderness walkway that's proposed. And we've been talking with conservation about those issues. So overall, there's a great resource for the community. It's on 15 acres of town-owned land. So I'll quickly just take you through the design. Here's a view of the outside looking from the ice rink. The main entry view, and you can kind of get an idea here of these two parts of the building. Kind of on the right side, we have a part that is more open to a variety of community needs, the more public space. And then on the left side, you have the area that's more focused on the 60-plus community, and you'll see that more in the plans. Here's another exterior view that shows an outdoor space next to the senior hub. And then there's also a second outdoor space on the upper level. And we've also looked at the potential of adding solar panels to this building to generate some electricity. This is also planned to be an all-electric building. The solar panels right now are not part of this project, but we're looking to maybe fund that with some grants, if we can find some grants for that, or also through cost savings for the project by using alternates. So here you have a view of the plans. On your right, you have the first floor. On your left, you have the second floor. You can see the big blue arrow on the right. That's the main entry. And so those lighter blue areas, those are more of the shared spaces. So those are also for the 60-plus community. Definitely the multi-purpose meeting room, also the gymnasium. Both of those spaces are going to be used by those groups. But they're also open to more uses by recreation and the veteran services. Each of those community departments have stated their need for that type of space and have a number of programs that they plan to run in those. The dark blue spaces are more for the seniors, if you will, the 60-plus groups. On the first floor, you have Elder and Human Services offices. And then on the bottom right-hand corner is kind of that senior hub. And then the orange spaces on the second floor are the offices for recreation and veteran services. Here's some views on the interior. The one on the left is right when you come in. You'll have reception to your right, the multi-purpose room reception on your left, multi-purpose room on your right. The second floor is then the access to the recreation and veteran services. And walking down the hallway, you have that program guide. So now if you look at the right image, you can see someone walking in, they can see what the programs are, and then head straight down the hallway to the senior lounge. So it really works as a senior center, even though it's part of an overall community center. Some views of the senior lounge and senior cafe. And the game room, which is near that senior lounge, and then a view of the multi-purpose room that can be divided for different types of uses. And here's a view of the gymnasium. And one thing I didn't mention when we were looking at the plans is that having these spaces also allows the town to use the facility for things like voting. That's been discussed as a need that people foresee for the future. And also, like you heard earlier, this can function as an emergency shelter, since we do have enough space to put cots for people to sleep. There are showers that are in the facility, and we also have a kitchen. And with the generator, we can have power if there's a power outage. So what are the costs? I guess that's what we want to talk about here tonight. So first, I'll give you just a little bit of a framework, kind of where things started, and then tell you kind of where we ended up, and then what the impacts are to the taxpayers. So during the feasibility study, the initial costs ranged from 28 to 29 million. That was based on a range of square footage because there were some different programmatic options. And that was based on construction starting in 2025, which obviously we're not doing right now. And there was a $2.6 million contingency. So I've kind of adjusted those numbers to reflect where we stand today. So if we look at the current square footage of the building, actually not being able to start construction until 2026, and the $4.7 million contingency that we're currently carrying, using those numbers with the feasibility study, that would have actually made it closer to about $33 million. So we also looked at, well, what can we expect to pay? What have other communities paid? And it is a little hard to get an exact number because you can't do an exact apples to apples comparison. Each project is very different. But we did find, a range, and I can talk about this in more detail if desired, of somewhere between 26 and 34 million. That's kind of where this type of facility of this type of size would be expected. But looking at the feasibility study numbers and the input we got from neighboring communities when they've done similar projects, we did hear back from the community that the project really needs to be under $30 million. So that's been a big thing that we've been working on as we go through the schematic design. How do we get this project to be the most cost-effective possible? So I'm happy to say that we were successful with doing that. We have an approved budget by the Permanent Building Committee for $27.9 million. And that doesn't include still the full $4.7 million in contingency, and it's based on a 2026 construction start date. So how did we do that? Well, like I said, throughout the schematic design, the Permanent Building Committee and the designer have worked together to really be very cost conscientious, questioning a lot of the materials that we would be using for the project, what kind of return on investment these different systems will give us, making sure that we're not oversizing or even undersizing the building, because if you undersize it, you just have higher costs that you need to pay later. So trying to be very efficient. Also the synergies of these groups, even though there's Elder and Human Services, Recreation, and Veterans, there's an overlap. So you're getting a lot more usage out of the space, which is a lot more efficient. And then in addition to those types of decisions that are made, also being very responsible in the financial planning. That's something that we take very seriously. During the schematic design, we had multiple cost estimates that helps to really make sure that we have a clear understanding not only of the current market conditions, but also on the scope to make sure that everything is included that needs to be included in the cost so they're not surprises later. And we put together a detailed project budget, thinking really about all the things that we can expect on this project and making sure that we do build in the right amount of contingencies for this type of project in this location, in this type of environment. And then finally, the use of alternates is also a tool that we can bake into the project that can help to manage so that we do not exceed the budget, but also allows us to get work done very cost effectively if there is additional money available and the town wants to put additional things into the project. So as I said, the project budget was set at $27.9 million. And you can see up here the 4 different contingencies that we have that total $4.7 million. They each have very specific purposes and are necessary to protect the project from inflation, from design issues, from construction issues that happen on these types of projects. Also, I do want to point out that some items that were considered optional are included in this project. So the first is the Range Road improvement to the second entrance to the parking lot. So that provides a better flow. That was requested by the fire department to have better access. So that has been included in this. Also, we do have a full building generator. That's what enables us to have this emergency shelter. We've included triple pane windows, which will help with the energy efficiency. And also cut down on sound transmission in the building. So if the pickleball courts are nearby, you're not going to have that noise disruption. And there is also a hold for a stone dust trail, and that's being worked out with the Conservation Commission on the details of that. But what's not included, as I mentioned before, is the pickleball courts. That's a separate project. So just to give you a general sense on where we are today and how things look moving forward, we would expect the project to be approved in May and then finish up the design work by the end of the year. And that would allow us to go out to bid by the first of the year and start construction the first quarter of 2026. And as I think you heard already this evening, that's one of the tactics that we've used to help manage costs. Because that will allow us to get the most effective or the lowest bids essentially on the project by having it nicely timed that way. And then once construction starts, we would expect the building to open in the fall of 2027. So we've had a lot of outreach on this project. We've had a number of public forums. There's been a tremendous amount of outreach. and newspapers. There's a lot of information on the website. If you haven't checked that out yet, please do. We can't cover all of it tonight, but you can reference a lot of the information there. And of course, a lot of people are asking, well, what's the impact going to be on the taxes? So we worked with the town, now that we had the budget, to figure out what possible terms could be and what kind of tax impacts. So Sharon had pulled together a number of different tax impacts ranging from 15 to 30 years with the current interest rates. And then also, like you heard already tonight, that, we did want to point out that there is debt service that's being retired, and that of course will have an impact on the taxpayers. So the overall range was 183 to 265 for this project for the average homeowner for a tax impact. And then if you were to put that together with the debt service that was being retired, that's where you would end up with a tax reduction. And that's what we mentioned before. So that doesn't include other town taxes or other projects as mentioned before, but that's the simple math on those numbers. So also I just wanted to point out that, we did have survey results back in 2022 that showed there was interest in an all ages community center. That's also what a lot of other neighboring communities have done. From what we found, those communities that didn't, build something initially, kind of wish that they've had. But a lot of communities in Massachusetts have been building these types of centers. And from those survey responses, we had 59% of the survey responses that supported at the time, back in 2022, a tax increase of $100 to $200 or more. And then 30% that supported a $200 to $300 plus tax increase. So just kind of taking that data from those surveys, I was kind of curious, well, that was back in 2022. What would that look like in today's numbers? So this is just really a point of reference. But after adjusting that for inflation, the 59% support was $115 to $230 tax increase. And then the 30%, that totaled $230 to $345. So we've heard that, the town is leaning towards a 15-year term for this project. I think we heard on Killam that would be a 20-year term. So using the data that Sharon provided, that shows a tax impact of $29.78 per 100,000. So for an average home, which is $890,000 evaluation, that would be $265 per year. So again, that without the other project, that would still be a tax reduction. So you asked for it, and here's your slide. What do they look like together? So using the numbers that Killam presented before with the 20-year term and an average home impact of $734 per year, and then with the ReCal project and the 15-year term and a $265 per year tax impact, then taking out the retiring debts of $387 per year, that would leave a tax impact of $612 per year for an average home for both projects.
For 15 years.
Before the override.
Which is about $51 a month or $12 a week.
That's not.
So also I want to point out that when we set a budget for the project, we do that very carefully. First of all, like I said, we want to make sure we have accurate data in the design, accurate data in the costs. And then we carefully look at market conditions and we try to set the contingencies to the right amount that's going to protect the project and protect the taxpayers. But it doesn't end there. As an OPM on the project, we continue to manage the costs all the way through the design and the construction. So we typically end up delivering projects below the budget. So that, I can't promise that, but that has been our track record, and that would be my hope on this project as well. So if we have this project budget that's approved, that we're going to continue to work to whittle down costs to find more cost-effective ways to accomplish the goals for the community without sacrificing the program. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is that these tax impacts would not be happening all at once. So you have the duration of construction both for ReCal, which would be shorter than for the Killam project, but spanning over a 3-year period. So not all that money is needed up front. It's going to be needed periodically over the, that period of time. So this wouldn't be hitting the taxpayers all at once. It would be, somewhat gradual up to that maximum amount. So here's basically where we stand. We've completed the schematic design. We've developed the budget. We have the approval from the Permanent Building Committee on the project. Last night, the Select Board met, and they voiced full support for this project. So we're here now presenting to you guys in the Finance Committee. And then I think you heard already these dates, May 1st, the special town meeting, and then May 13th, the special town vote. So that was pretty brief.
Well done.
It was good.
Well done, Brian.
They were very nervous about the amount.
A lot of slides. All day.
I'll start by asking, did you make that slide with combined costs just now as we were, that's not in the packet, so.
I did that earlier today. Yeah,
Okay,
before I came here.
that's, okay, well then that was foresightful, thank you, because that is the, I guess, $612 question, but yes. All right, so yes, questions from the committee? Sure there are questions, but
I'm always the first, so that's good.
please.
Can I ask a question of what percentage of the total square footage is the senior hub? Because I'm eyeballing and it looks like it's only about 25%, and am I wrong?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely not 25%. I can go back to that slide. That's probably the best thing to do.
Yeah,
To show you the square footage on the plan.
Oh, look, Joel.
I'm talking
Oh, hi,
like
Joel. Yeah, I did-
dedicated senior hub, because it just feels like there should be more for our seniors here, but that's
So
just me.
Joel can probably give us a better understanding of the exact square footage, but what I would say is that the multi-purpose room and the gym are definitely part of the spaces that are going to be used for the seniors.
But not exclusively, like.
Not exclusively.
Like at 3:00 when all the middle schoolers show up, the seniors, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the seniors don't want to be there. So I'm just wondering how much middle space seniors, and I turned 60 a month ago, so I'm a senior now, so I'm really concerned. So how much space am I gonna have?
Well, I'll let Joel talk about the square footage, but yes, you're right. So, those other spaces that I highlighted are going to be more shared spaces. They're going to be for the seniors, but at other times, they're going to be used by other programs. And so, like the recreation department right now is currently renting space in other buildings to accommodate those needs. So when the seniors aren't using the space, we can capitalize on using the space, which also helps to save money. But Joel, maybe you can talk about some of the differences in square footages.
Well, I think to say that it's a senior dedicated spaces is a little misleading there. Right? During the day, the seniors have access to all of those spaces, and they have priority use when at other times during the day. So if in the evening the senior programs expand and they need to use a multi-purpose room, the intent is that they have priority over use of that multi-purpose room. The multi-purpose room happens to be 2,300 square feet. The gym is a similar space that's there for their use. Typically, we have these centers for active living in many communities, and at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, they do turn those gyms over to recreation use. So that the gym is 6,800 square feet. When the gym is used for that, that doesn't preclude seniors or anybody else from using the track that's on the level above the gym. So it's very hard to say exactly how much you have at any time, but I think it's fair to say that the senior center spaces, if you take out the gym, are 18 to 19,000 square feet of space. And then you add that gym during the day, it gets you up to the 28,000 total square feet that we have in the building. And that's very comparable to other communities of this size that have that, and it's very comparable to the Newton count, and Newton has a much larger population. So I think what Brian's drawing was trying to do is say, these are spaces that are just for the seniors, that are designed very specifically for seniors. We don't anticipate a lot of sharing in those spaces. These are the spaces that are open at different hours when it's allowed by the senior programming.
Okay, I just know because you're mentioning how the senior population is 60 and over. A lot of people, like myself, 60 and over, are still working. And when you get out of work, it's going to be it's not going to be a real dedicated senior center. But I also know at the other end, maybe seniors over 75 prefer to be out during the day and not driving at night. So it's hard to meet. Like you said, it's different needs. I just, this isn't really a construction question, maybe it's just a use question. I just hope to see, the point of building this is for the seniors, that you'll be able to prioritize their usage and give them the space they need.
Yeah, I mean, we have people here from the Council on Aging, from all the town departments, and I don't know if they want to speak about this, but I can just say, having sat in on the meetings, that there have been a tremendous number of meetings on how they're going to work together and how the senior needs are going to be prioritized throughout this process. And I think everyone's kind of on the same page with that.
Thank you.
Sure. Let me just add a little color to this part of the conversation. We've hired a consultant to come in and work with us on our operational planning. So we're working with Elder and Human Services, Veterans, and Recreation. And then that will also help us project our operational costs, which may be a question that's coming up later. We know we'll need, more custodial support for a building that's roughly 3 times the size of the current Pleasant Street Center. But our staff work tremendously well together, and we all understand and prioritize the needs of the 60-plus community for this project, for this building, and it's a longitudinal priority. And Brian touched on it, it's in your packet, our vision statement, our mission statements that guide how we do the operational plan and how we designate those spaces and how we use them. So we are very well aware that with a building like this, we'll be able to cater much better to the needs of our working senior 60-plus population, of which by the time this is done, I'll also be almost in that population. I'm really looking forward to that walking track, I'm telling you. But, it really is a way that we can, really serve the community. And the population and demographic is tremendously changing. And so we're very cognizant of that, and we're trying to learn from our neighbors who are doing this work, folks who have finished these buildings, folks that have just, have been operating them for a while, and then being able to bring them into our understanding and how we go forward.
All right. Okay. More questions? Joe?
Thanks. It might be back to the operational plan, but
sure.
Will that include, so how much is baked in here, for furniture?
FF&E? That's an architectural question, my friend.
500K. 500K, that's what they have in the cost. It's right
There we go.
on page 48 of our package. If you zoom in that.
The micro,
sorry.
we can give you more detail.
Okay, now I see, okay.
It's
And was that,
and technology, 300K.
yeah, and that's where I was kind of going to, where, for digital, AV, other assumptions about, I'm just thinking of the audience, right? I'm still thinking this is more for the senior population.
The new audiovisual upgrades that have been done to the Pleasant Street Center will be brought over to this project. So we'll capture new technology and bring it back into this building. So it's brand new investment over there. And look, Joel's here to add on to that. I think.
The audio-visual budget includes hearing assist in the program rooms and in the multipurpose room. So it encompasses all the technology that goes into the building for presentations and audience and presenter presentations.
Okay.
And the furniture budget there is a detailed furniture budget room by room using the quotes from this state list on approved furniture vendors for these kind of projects, so that they're accurate.
And that furniture's, oh, sorry, yeah. But it's more designed for like, I'm thinking older people, I'm just.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, okay, the same thing, the bathrooms and all that would be.
absolutely. Yep, it's the widths of stairwells, widths of hallways. Yes, we have, our architectural team has done and worked very closely with our Council on Aging members to ensure that this is, exceeds the minimums of ADA.
Yeah, great. And then just, I've asked this like in other forums, but for Pleasant Center, like the plans for that, because my concern is like, I'm very supportive of this, but I'm worried that we have Pleasant Center still surviving as a town building to maintain, operate, et cetera, right? So.
It's like you're in our heads,
Yeah.
Joe.
We talked a lot about that. I did a little presentation to the select board a few weeks ago about what we're gonna do with the Pleasant Center, what the ideas may be. We could have a rental situation, a lease situation, or even sell it. We're in the process of getting an appraisal right now. We were going on the tax assessed value, just to ballpark it. And then, you know, it could bring in anywhere $85,000 to $100,000 a year in leasing, depending on who we lease it to. It could be a nonprofit use, could be a for-profit use. So I'll have more on that as we go forward to town meeting, but it's something we're definitely looking at and thinking about. So.
Okay. Do we have any idea, like, I'm not advocating that we sell it, but is there any sense of what the market value for it would be?
Like I said, we're going to do an appraisal on it. I think when we looked at it from a tax standpoint, it's currently assessed for like $870,000, which seems, you know, low to me.
Yeah, it has historical, yeah, it has historical restrictions too, but.
Exactly, yeah.
So, okay.
So we're going to get a commercial appraisal done on it.
Okay, I just think it'd be really important to like
you're
to
right
include
on.
this at town meeting.
Yeah, oh yeah,
So,
it's certainly on our list. You're right on about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there gonna be an elevator in this building? Where is it in the schematic? Can't figure it out.
When you come in, the entrance, just to your right, just past the multi-purpose room. Right here.
Oh, right here? Oh, I see it, yeah. Okay, so on the cost, I saw that you budget 0 for hazmat. Is that a reason behind it? On the cost?
Yeah, this is a new structure, so there's no abatement.
So has there been a study on the soil there?
Yes, yeah, we did have a study in the soil as well. I know that was a concern initially. But before we finalized the site selection, we had the data from the environmental engineer telling us that we don't have any hazardous soils that need to be removed.
There is a line here for profit. It says, so under construction cost, it says profit 498K. It's
That would-
percentage of the base cost. What is that?
So that's for the general contractor. So that's cost of doing business. I mean, so that would be so this project is planned to go out to bid, so design, bid, build, rather than like construction manager at risk. So we will be awarding to the lowest qualified bidder on this project. So that's an estimate of what we would expect they would have built into their bids for profit. So those numbers are put together when we do the cost estimating, because we want to get a realistic idea of what the bids might come in at.
Okay. That's all I have.
John? Have we looked at all at current parking utilization at the existing lot on that site?
For the ice rink?
Yeah.
Yes, we have, and actually, I think Joel could probably speak to the best of that, having done the parking calculations. But we have had discussions with them and plan to use shared parking.
Okay, because, sorry.
Yeah, can you talk about the numbers, Joel, and the arrangements with the Burbank Ice Arena?
We retained a parking consultant to do an assessment as part of the feasibility study so that we were sure that the sites would support the required parking. With the staff, including the veterans and the recreation and the elder services staff, the entire staff, the staff to maintain this will have a full-time custodian, and then the users of the building, that parking count came to about 90 spaces, and I think we're providing 92 or 93 on the site. There may be, like there's an upcoming St. Patrick's Day lunch. If that's a sellout event and we have more parking, we've approached the arena to see if we could use that front parking lot, and there's been discussions in that regards, because they have similar needs when there are big hockey games. Having the parking lot with 90 spaces on the other side of Range Road from their facility would benefit their program. So there's a synergy, and what that does, it allows us to have less asphalt on our site, which is expensive, but it's also very hot in the winter, and it increases the amount of stormwater management systems that you have to put on the site. So this idea of shared parking, as it comes to fruition, has a number of benefits to it. But on a day-to-day basis, the parking lot for Recal is sufficient, and that's not anticipating parking from the pickleball facility. They have their own parking.
Okay, and so on a day-to-day basis, we would think Recal would need 90-ish spots.
That's the projection, and that's also based on the traffic engineer has done facilities for us of this size with gyms and multiple use in Situate, in Sudbury, in Falmouth. They did Newton. They've done many of them, so there's a lot of good, Needham, they have a lot of good data on how these actually get used, and so it's a experiential basis to the number.
Okay, so this lot, the lot that we're looking at on this map at Recalc has about 90 spots. We expect day-to-day parking demand to be about 90 spots, but there's also a lot across Range Road that has 90 spots, give or take, which might fill
That's
up
correct.
during hockey games.
There's 90 out front, and there's additional parking in the back where the town fields are. And so the anticipation was the front would be an overflow opportunity as discussions with Burbank continue.
So I guess it just seems to me that we're building a lot of parking that is gonna sit empty most of the time. Right, like there's two 90-spot lots that are right next to each other, and like one of them we're gonna need 90 spots during the day, and the other we're gonna need 90 spots sometimes at night. Does it seem like that's a lot of extra parking?
Maybe the senior center users can't walk that far to the other one, I don't know.
Yeah, it's very much overall.
Programming.
Make it closer.
The design of the center is such that we try to get a good 30 to 40% of the parking within 125 feet of that front door of the building. And if you park day to day at Burbank, you'd have to cross the road and come in. It's an interesting comment, because usually we get the reverse comment that we need more parking. But we really tried to right size this parking lot for the day-to-day use and then have the overflow. Because there are times where Burbank has an event during the day and you wouldn't be able to park. So recently there was a Monday very large hockey game not that long ago. The lots were full, and that would have been a day that the senior center would also be open.
And then the Recal will also have programs in the evening.
Quick question. Do we know what the maximum capacity is of the building, the way that it's used right now, it's projected?
The proposed design?
Yeah.
I don't have, Joel, you would have the number, right, for the occupancy?
Well, there's two occupancies. There's one occupancy that is for the worst case scenario. Every room is full at the same time, and you have to evacuate the building, which you'll see that on the drawings, and that's an 800 person number, but that never happens. You don't ever have every room in your building filled to absolute capacity. The way we do it is we do real scenarios for morning, noon, afternoon, and then peak events like Thanksgiving lunch, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day event, current events, a movie, a presenter, and the average of that is between 80 people at a low point in the morning to 150 people to 200 in the afternoon. And not everybody arrives solo in a car. They have a ratio that has been extrapolated from the other projects and the ITE standards that project how many cars you need for that many people, and that gets us to the number of 90 cars. But the projection on average is there'd be about 150 people actively using the building at any one time.
Thank you.
I don't know if this is a question for you, but the timeline in construction is nearly, not identical, but significant overlap with the Killam construction timeline, and those sites are quarter mile, half mile apart. I don't know if this is a Recal or a Killam or a town question, but that will be a very significant disruption to that area, with Haverhill Street being a main access point to 95. Have we given thought to the impact on traffic and parking, and like where the teachers are going to park, where, you know, while all these things are happening, there's a lot of cars that are going to need to go somewhere. So just wanted to. Construction workers need to park, the Killam staff will need to park.
So those are part of the plans that are put together for the construction phase, you know, the phasing and where the parking is going to be. And then during the construction period, managing traffic issues. So if there are big deliveries coming in that would impact residents or something like that, there'd be notification and coordination within the community to address those.
Yeah, so I'm just making sure they coordinate with each other, I think is critical.
I wouldn't anticipate any major problems.
So I'll cover that. The construction workers, they're early. It's almost like 6 to 2. So they're gonna be in very early. So you're talking about congestion on Haverhill Street. That'll alleviate that quite a bit. As far as the Recal project, I don't see really an issue with parking. That parking lot is gonna serve as construction worker parking on the laydown area, and depending on what the status is of the pickleball courts, if that's not done, that's even more staging. Killam will be between, you know, displacing the fields and, you know, having teachers and occupied school. That will be a challenge that will have to be worked out in the design development. But the construction workers, it is like starting at 6. So
My husband's in construction, I know, but
starting at 6 or 7 on the road, so it's the traffic congestion is less impact than you'd think.
I'd say in the morning, yes, but in the afternoon, when you're talking 2:30 exit from the site and Killam pickup at 2:45, it's gonna be.
Killam's gonna be a challenge.
It's gonna be a real big challenge, so, you know, just where those sites are so close.
Yeah, I mean, on the Killam project, I don't know if we need to consider off-site parking somewhere else, but I'm sure that could be managed. And this site, you know, where there's a lot of land is just right across the street, so maybe something like that could work.
Joe, time for a comment?
Mark, please go ahead.
So I think one of the things that I would like everybody to keep in mind is this whole project facility was designed first and foremost for the 60-plus community. And the advantage of having this type of facility, of having this kind of layout down there by the ice rink, is to really leverage all the activities that are there. So if the town, in fact, also decides to support pickleball, it gets a lot of use of the 60-plus community in terms of outdoor pickleball. The gym at certain times can be configured to do, is it 3 pickleball courts, Joel, inside the gym?
Yes.
You can have conceivably three pickleball courts inside the gym. And so having all these things allows it to be leveraged. I think I shared with you last time, and I exaggerate slightly, the parts of this building could run 24/7. I exaggerate. Obviously, you'd have to service it and keep things going. But we have a lot of needs in recreation. We have a lot of needs in programming for seniors that we don't accommodate fully today. A lot of it is daytime, but not all of it. And to your point, there's nighttime activities that needs to happen. Would it take up every single room in the facility? Probably not. There's probably opportunity. That's the programming challenge or programming opportunity, to make sure that it works for the community. The other advantage that I kind of see with all these things coming together, parking brought it up, all these different pieces. This site allows for these things all to be close and to be as accessible as possible for a broad swath of the community. 60 plus first, and then a broad swath that follows. The quote-unquote dedicated space has been the source of a lot of discussion. And there could be more dedicated space, which means that some of that space is going to be empty more regularly, or we can leverage it and use it in other ways. The challenge for that is going to be on Elder and Human Services to make sure that works smoothly with priority for the 60-plus community as the mantra. That's what it's got to be. So the opportunity here is to have the track above the gym that can be used, all the time. Is to have different activities that can take place. One of the big challenges that we talked about early on was, how do you get more of the younger 60-plus community to participate? That's a challenge that senior centers in general have. And for this community where it's not just Reading that has this big bump in 60-plus. It's this country, at least. I don't know if it's broader, but it's all over the place. There are more folks that are staying here. There are more folks that want to utilize different kinds of facilities. This is a great opportunity to accomplish that. I'll leave it with that.
That's a quick question.
Please.
So this facility is gonna be only for Reading residents, and how would we enforce that? Why are you gonna enforce it at all, or just out of curiosity?
I think, I'm gonna ask Chris to ask that question.
Yes.
Would you mind?
Yes. Hi, Chris Kowalski, Elder and Human Services Administrator. So the majority of our participation now is Reading residents. We do Reading residents priority first. We do have, it's under 10% of residents outside North Reading, surrounding towns. But also Reading residents also go to surrounding senior centers. The key is Reading residents are a priority. To a small percentage of outside residents that come in. One thing I do try to keep in mind is there are a lot of folks who come from outside of town that support us. I have a lot of folks who regularly give us some donations. They're like, hey, here's a check. We love being here. Have some, this is for you guys, and thank you for allowing us to be here. But we do make sure that Reading residents get top priority.
Through registration.
Oh, what's that?
Through registration.
Yeah, through registrations and everything. So like trips, programs, it's always Reading residents first. And then if there's any space available after that, outside residents can jump on. We're working on details on pricing on that. If we charge outside residents maybe just a little bit more, but those details are still being worked out and figured out.
Yeah, just building on that, you've got this walking track with a basketball court. And unless it's reserved by rec, what's to stop just any, group of 30-year-olds showing up, hey, we need an indoor, it's a rainy night, let's go play basketball here. And they're driving over from Lynn or whatever, or Danvers.
So,
how are we controlling that?
So right now, one thing to keep in mind is even at the Pleasant Street Center and the way we're set up now, recreation does use the Pleasant Street Center currently. It's usually, right now, the Pleasant Street Center closes at 4. Usually our last programs kind of start at the end of the day at 3. And then building closes at 4. But we have recreation and we do a lot of intergenerational stuff. Some of these details need to just kind of still be studied and worked out a little bit, but we have that's the key part right there is we have a great relationship. Jim Sullivan, myself, we work really closely together, which works out really well to be able to kind of control a lot of things. On who's coming in, who's kind of coming out, who's doing what and when. Which is really nice, and we're doing that now, and it's very successful on being able to control. And we have to keep in mind, which is nice, a lot of our older adults, we have a lot of, we always want to make sure we honor what older adults want. Some older adults, there's a cohort that likes just to be older adults. We have another cohort that likes to be works with older kids and have them around. They really value that. And we have another one that kind of likes all age ranges. So we try to value each cohort, especially for older adults, and respect what people want. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, this is just something new and different. This is like a satellite Y with all these free facilities that are great and that are gonna draw more than what our current senior center has, right?
Yeah. Numbers will increase, but the nice thing is, with the new center, we'll have one main entrance, so we can monitor who kind of comes out, who comes and goes, which will be nice. As you can see on the drawings, come in the door through the entrance, and the desk is right there. We don't have that right now with the Pleasant Street Center. You go in the door, people can go right upstairs, or then go, two ways, which makes it more challenging. So with the design, the nice design of Joel and everyone, it's nice because we can control who kind of flows in and out.
And I think in our operational plan, we're gonna have all of these details by town meeting. And I think the intention is to charge all of the non-residents. So the senior non-residents will have a certain fee, and then a non-resident child or family from another town will have a fee as well. And a lot of the other similar centers around Massachusetts have the same type of policies in place. So we'll have that buttoned up by town meeting to give to you all. And it will also help us, pay for a lot of the costs inside the building, just charging some non-residents.
Quick question, do we know the hours of operation, just out of curiosity?
Yep, so the rough hours of operation are now under the FAQ section in our, on our website. And offhand, I don't know them by heart. Do you have?
We've talked about this, right? They're not fixed right now, Audrey. Like it may differ from different nights where there's demand, demand generation will staff toward what folks want to do. When we're talking about your scenario, Marianne, is more like an open gym, right? So it would be designated open gym, and then people would have to come in and register and tell us who they are and so forth. But we would anticipate programming maybe, men's basketball leagues, yoga, those kinds of things would be programmed, so people would know.
Right, no, charge for use. I mean, you gotta pay for the wear and tear, pay for this building.
I think roughly during the week, it's like 8 to 8. And then on the weekends, like 8 to 3, and Sunday 8 to 2 or something like that, roughly. So. And then obviously after 8 p.m., we can still have programs, but not have the whole entire building open. So if it's just a senior line dancing program, we can shut down one whole side of the building and just have the gym open. So that's another great feature of this building. So we can be a little bit more thoughtful in how we're using it.
Senior line dancing.
Yeah, we actually do have a nighttime line dancing program right now. So 30 people?
20 something, yes.
20 something.
I'll say 30, yes.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and I'm not sure you wanted to do this, but if you have space in the summer, there's obviously all these hockey camps at Burbank. You might be able to get synergy there with like programming to use the space. I mean, I don't know if the demand goes down in the summertime, but there's all these summer camp opportunities, right?
The nice thing is there's a lot of opportunities on Elder and Human Services, Veterans, and Recreation. I know my goal, even in the Pleasant Street Center, and I believe everyone else's, I don't want to speak for everyone, but is to maximize the usage of this building to its fullest potential. If the town's going to pay for this building, let's make sure we fill it. Let's make sure we have the program so it's used to its fullest potential. I know myself, I don't want it to be, sitting empty. And it gives us, and this gives us also an opportunity to look at new and upcoming, new programming. I've stated this numerous times, could we do robots? I mean, how many retired engineers do we have in the, town that we could do some intergenerational stuff? So we could do robotics, we could do woodworking, we're limited on what we can do now, but it's nice that with this building, we can think outside the box and bring a lot of programming that we don't have now, so we can reach more of the community members.
Go ahead. And last one. Sorry. I see there is a kitchen in there. Is that a full-on commercial kitchen or is just like a tiny little one? And what's it gonna be used for? Is it gonna help mostly?
So, there has been conversations, I think we're leaning more towards the commercial side. That's correct. Right now, we have community meals. So we need a full capacity kitchen to meet code. A lot of it is warming up, but over the past year, even at the Pleasant Street Center, we've added cooking classes, and we're trying to, again, think outside that box. On top of that, we also have different dinners, and like the Lions Club comes in and they do a senior dinner. The police department comes in and they do a senior dinner and utilize the kitchen and the stove. So it'll be nice to have, first of all, a larger kitchen, again, to expand programming, but also to meet the needs and continue to meet the needs of the community.
And cooking classes.
And cooking classes, yes.
Yeah, the cost estimates include the commercial kitchen. So if there was, and that also meets the threshold for the shelter
Does that mean
requirement.
we're gonna hire a cook there or?
That's not currently in the operational plan, Andrew, but if you'd like to fund it.
Oh, they're volunteers.
Yeah, right. There are communities that do have chefs on staff, which I had no idea about, but that's a thing.
If you have a commercial kitchen, why not?
I mean, we're just gonna drag you onto the project, Andrew.
But also,
How do they feed them for community meals? Like, do they cater? What do
yep. So right now, thanks to ARPA, we used to use Mystic Valley Elder Services, but thanks to ARPA, we have been able to utilize a lot of the local businesses, which is really nice because we can kind of give back to the local small businesses in the town as well. So, everything goes out on bid. So Mondays, the Professor's Market has been providing our Monday community meals. And for our lunch and learns, we go to Fat Larry's. And then for some of our larger events, like St. Patrick's Day luncheon, we've used Munratty's, we've used Mandarin down in the end of town, and we used Dakara's down across from Home Goods. So it's kind of nice the way it's set up because we can, utilize local businesses.
Chris?
Yes.
You might mention that we can seat 125 for
Yep, I
these
was gonna
meetings
mention
here.
that. Right now, as Marilyn was saying, thank you, Marilyn. And another opportunity that this could provide is right now, if we want to do a large meal like we do, we go up to the Hillview Country Club up in North Reading because we just don't have the capacity. And we can, some of these meals we get 150. We can go up. I know for a Thanksgiving meal, we have almost 200 people. And then we could do that in this building if we wanted to. So that would be nice to have the space to be able to sit up to that many folks. And it would be nice to have a commercial kitchen so we could pull that off.
Okay.
I don't see any hands. I also don't see any on Zoom, so thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Great job, you.
So, do we need to adjourn any more committees before anyone leaves?
Building committee needs to adjourn.
Yeah, the permanent Recal Building Committee, your motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
Second.
Mark Oxer,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Nancy Zimlock,
Yes.
John Coot,
Yes. Yes.
That's everything. In the Killam School Building Committee, Ed, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Oh, gotta take off mute first.
I'm not leaving, I'm just.
Second.
Nancy Toomey,
Yes.
John Coop,
Yes.
Ed Ross. We have Chris Haley,
Chris is on.
He's muted right now.
Pat Tompkins.
Oh, we got a yes from Chris.
Pat Tompkins, yes.
Is Karen still on?
Thank you all.
Did see?
Yes, Karen is still on.
Yeah, motion to adjourn the select board?
So can we adjourn the select board?
I'll second.
Okay, Chris?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And Karen, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Say, do we need an ergonomic recess or we,
I just needed to stand up.
Maybe we
Legs
can
falling.
grind through the
yeah, let's,
approvals in the minutes, right?
We can do this.
all right, okay. All right, so next on our agenda is the Finance Committee Reserve transfer request. I'm just gonna talk about that.
I can talk about it. So we're requesting $80,000, $60,000 of which is for election costs. We had some cost overruns for the elections, plus we're doing the special elections, so there's additional funding needed. And we've listed the several different accounts where we need a little additional funding. And then we've had some traffic control repairs that have run over what we've budgeted. I don't know, just, it's kind of a variable sort of thing when those things come up. And they've requested another $20,000, so a total of $80,000 across the election cost and the DPW traffic control repairs.
The town clerk and DPW director are here if you have any specific questions. Town clerk's on Zoom, DPW director.
See you both, thank you for being here. I could probably think of a question or two, but I want to let other folks go first, so.
The justification mentions the presidential election being a significant overcost. I would have expected that to come in earlier. Why didn't we hear about this closer to November, I guess is, not to be
I guess
too blunt about it,
it's something that Laura could probably answer.
Laura?
So we didn't necessarily pick up on the extra cost until after we started, until after the election itself. It had the extra cost came in with the amount of vote by mail ballots, and then also the extra staff that we needed to process all that. And that didn't come about until after the November election.
Okay.
What was the breakdown of I'm sure you probably told us before and I heard it at a select board meeting or something, but what was the breakdown of in-person versus vote by mail in November? Do you know by any chance?
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I can look them up if you want to give me just a second. Absolutely.
I have a similar question, the answer of which will not, is not, no matter what the answer is not going to change my support for obviously funding having the election in May. But when we did the budget for FY25, did we not anticipate a special election for one or more building projects?
We did not. We did not also anticipate the special election that we had in May of 2024 as well.
Right, that was an FY24. I think we had to. I recall us having to allocate money for that because that was an FY24 problem with the special election.
So the answer to the question for the November presidential election, we vote by mail ballots. We had 6,856 ballots that were returned. I don't know the number that was sent out, but I could tell you that about 15% are not, 15 to 20% are not returned. So we can, I would say we probably sent out about 9,000 ballots. In-person early voting ballots was 3,162. And absentee ballots were 69.
Yes, Marianne, you have a question?
So Laura, under the 10,000 for election supplies / equipment, was there some kind of piece of equipment that broke for that amount of money? Like what was the $10,000.
So, there's a couple things that are coming out of that. One is that, for the September and November election, we were able to get a high-speed scanner to be able to scan the vote by mail ballots that the state leased and paid for. It's a $20,000 machine.
I see.
The state paid for us to be able to lease it, and now we are able to purchase that machine for just under $4,000, just over $3,000, somewhere in that exact center. So that's part of that. So we will now own the machine. Basically, we're getting a $20,000 machine for under $4,000.
So that's kind of it's not considered a capital or expense? It's not something we...
No, because we're purchasing it for the $4,000 as basically a used machine, and it was us that used it.
Okay. But it'll save us time getting returns in the future?
I can speak to that.
Most definitely.
Okay.
Well, no, I'm not gonna, well, hang on, let me step back a second.
relative,
It's not gonna save time on getting returns in, it's gonna save staffing, because what was happening before is all the vote by mail ballots were being processed within the precincts. And within the precinct, the machine that are used within the precincts takes about 8 to 10 seconds for a ballot to be fed through. With the high-speed scanner, it takes about 8 to 10 seconds for about 50 ballots to be scanned through. So it's a lot faster process. Once we get more experience with it, we'll be able to have all of the vote by mail ballots done fairly early in the day versus having them stay after the polls close to continue feeding ballots through the machine.
Okay, cool.
That's really going to confuse people who like to watch the hourly turnout numbers during elections. Oh, well.
That is true, because you won't get.
They won't be able to
numbers
compare
off
to
of
previous
the
years
high-speed
because
scanner.
vote by mail will be put in through its precinct, but it's all right. I like the
Well,
$20,000.
you get the numbers by precinct, with the high-speed scanner, you get the numbers by precinct, but you don't get them until the end of the day.
Okay.
Whereas with the, without that, you're getting the numbers throughout the day with the vote by mail ballots.
Yeah.
But those numbers typically didn't come in until the end of the day anyway, when they were being fed in the individual precincts, because as someone who's done it, that takes lowest priority, right? You want to service the voters who are there in person and then feed those at the end, so it's not a huge difference.
Yeah.
But the scanner, worth every penny. It is amazing.
Take a word.
Full support.
All right. Strong testimonial.
Yes. Okay.
So another portion of that is that because of the vote by mail and the laws that are put in place on what we have to keep for retention, we have a storage issue. So we have to figure out something to do for storage. We currently and I'll be glad to take anybody for a tour, but in Town Hall, we have a room in the basement that we refer to as the election room, where we store everything. I went down there the other day to get something out and I couldn't get in the door because everything is just so jam-packed with all the stuff that we have to save and store. And if you look behind you, you see all those toolboxes that are there.
Yep.
That's because we have no other place to put them. Those are for elections. And if you look in the conference room, you'll see that there's stuff stored there too, as well. So the other portion of that is to try and figure out what we're gonna do about storage. I kind of have a plan, we have a plan. Should I go into that
I was
plan?
going to say, will it cost money? Most things do, but
Yeah, so what I'm looking into is purchasing, and that's included in this extra 60,000.
Oh.
We're looking at purchasing a help me out here. What do you call that thing?
Oh,
It's not a storage
on-demand
shed, but it's a
thing, yep.
box that's used for shipping, a shipping container, there you go.
Shipping container.
It's a 10 by 10 shipping container to put in the town hall parking lot in the area where the dumpster used to be. So, and if you walk out to the town hall anytime that I'm there, you'll see that my truck is illegally parked in that spot. So that's where the shipping container will go for us to store and be able to meet the retention schedule.
And will that be secure? like considered as secure as the building, I guess?
Correct, yes. Yes.
Just a quick question, does the retention have to be paper or can it be electronic?
It has to be paper. So what the retention that what I'm referring to is, we have to keep all of the voted ballots, all of the envelopes that those ballots were shipped that came in, all of the paperwork that has to be done with the vote by mail and the in-person early voting, and the supporting documentation for the entire election for 22 months. So what we used to keep was just the ballots. Now we have to keep the ballots, the envelopes, and then we're talking the envelopes that we sent them out in and the envelopes that we received them back in. All of those have to be kept for 22 months for every election. And that's kind of like tripling our storage space that we had before vote by mail existed. And then after the 22 months, I have to shred them.
And there is no space up in the attic here?
Oh, no way.
No?
No. No, and you're talking heavy boxes to take up in,
Oh, that's
up in the attic. Yeah, but there's no space up there. And if you walk around the town clerk's office, you'll see that there's boxes stored up against every corner or wall that you can find, as well as within the hallway.
So Laura,
Going into where Jane's office is.
but that has to be in town hall, right? It cannot be anywhere else. It has to be here, close to your.
It has to be kept secure, and I have to have immediate access to it.
You need access to it, okay. And I'm only asking because, for example, IMLD has a beautiful building that's not being used. What's it called? The old.
Station 1?
Yeah, Station 1. I don't know if they have anything there, but.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we could take the stuff that doesn't have to be secured near what the town clerk has to access, other things that are stored at town hall, other archives, and move it there to make more room for her stuff, or is she the only one that really has to store stuff in paper form?
We still store certain things upstairs, but it is getting pretty full up.
No, upstairs is a no-go, because I know how to, you cannot get all those boxes up there, it's just not feasible.
No, but so the stuff upstairs, whatever, you can't bring that, all right, so you can't,
But you can, if you move that, it's just a.
so there's
you
nothing
can't
we can
move
put in the
that.
empty RMLD building?
But I don't know if they have space.
Yeah, I
there,
mean, that
maybe.
RMLD building, I mean, I think it needs a lot of work inside before.
I have no idea how it
be
looks
ready.
inside, so
It looks
I'm
very nice from the outside, but it would need quite a cleanup. I mean, they used to actually generate the power right in that.
And another interesting idea, I don't know if Shannon's gonna like this or not, but our retirement office has leases some space, and they might have some space there, I don't know.
Retirement?
If Laura though can access it though, that building actually locks down at 5, right?
Yeah, but I don't think they have any space to store
That's
anything.
You don't think so?
Oh my God, they've got file cabinets in both those extra rooms, so I don't know. I mean, it would make it kind of like the rooms would be kind of
I
clever
just,
to put anything
the
else.
optics of having a container out there, it's just kind of strange, that's all. Just my opinion.
So right now, we also have, we own a trailer that all of the election equipment is stored in, and that's stored down at DPW.
That's a
That
good
is
idea.
full. And then we also store stuff over at the police department, and that area is full.
I guess every town must be facing this challenge then too.
Yes, it's something that we talk about at the clerks' conferences on a regular basis, like what are we doing for storage with all this extra stuff that we have to keep because of the vote by mail. And vote by mail is not gonna go away, it's gonna increase. So, we're having storage challenges now, and I see the vote by mail numbers going up every election. Which means that we're gonna continue having this problem, if not, getting worse each year. Another thing that we have to store, for example, all of the applications that folks send in requesting a vote by mail ballot, we have to keep those applications, and we have to keep the paper for 22 months as well.
All right.
And there's no place at the senior center, right?
They're using the senior center as a storage facility. The machines
I've
that
actually
needed
thought
access.
about, how would it be if we took a town clerk's office and moved into the senior center, to the Pleasant Street Center?
I know.
I hear it
But,
smells
You
funny.
move to where the storage is.
I don't know.
That's
That's
still
a
a
question
couple
for Matt.
years away.
Okay,
It's a
I feel-
bad question.
it's an interesting conversation, but I'm not sure most of it's pertinent to whether we're going to approve this reserve fund transfer. Jimmy?
Joe, can I switch to traffic control?
I think there we go.
Hopefully this will be much briefer, but on that side, is there any I know that it looks like there were some surprises, but is there any underlying infrastructure problem that we have to worry about? That there's gonna be, we're sitting on something that,
Well, no, it's just a general increase in costs and repairs. Electronics are definitely increasing with inflation. We had a lot with that traffic signal over here at Main and Salem, but there is funding that will hopefully get approved at town meeting to move that signal further north by about 10 feet to get it away from the intersection, so it won't be getting hit all the
People don't,
time.
I was gonna say, people stop running into it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the,
But yes,
right.
pretty much just increased costs and increased frequency of repairs. There's a lot inside those cabinets, and when something goes, it's expensive.
okay, yeah, thanks.
I have no other questions.
Making sure.
Hey Sharon, one other question on the scanner. Somebody was asking if it was capital equipment, so I think it's got a useful life of greater than a year. What's the minimum cost for capital equipment?
It's gotta be at least $5,000.
All right, there we go. Good thing we got it on sale. All right. Any other questions? All right.
Move to approve the reserve fund transfer as presented.
Second.
Oh, thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Andre. All right. Any further discussion before we vote? All right, starting on Zoom. Mark,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes,
Emily,
Yes.
Marianne,
Yes.
Jeffrey,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and Joe, yes.
Is that 9?
That was 9-0. Yeah, no, we actually have this awesome committee. People actually come to
The
stuff.
chair
It's
has
great.
to sign this.
I
Oh,
have
did
to
you
sign
actually,
something,
Yeah.
you brought it too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll let him sign that one, I don't
Sorry,
know.
okay.
I signed it twice. Yeah.
I assume I can do that after we adjourn, right? All
Yeah,
right.
you can, I guess.
Yes, exactly. All right, so let's all right, let's keep moving along. So, next item is to vote on snow and ice deficit spending. Is that
Snow and Ice has been kind to us the last couple of years, not so much this year. You'll notice that at April town meeting, we're having to ask for $275,000 for snow and ice. So the last couple of years been very mild. This year, not so much. So anytime we do go into a deficit, we have to have it approved so that if we fail to ask for enough money or we don't even bother to ask for money for it, that's a legal deficit that we can have and we can raise it on the recap. But you have to have permission, so that's what the formality of this is just to let you know that I can see that we're going into deficit so that you're aware they're doing deficit spending. And we're gonna obviously do what our normal practice is, which is go to town meeting and ask for the additional funding out of free cash. But if it happens to go over even what I asked for, this allows for that deficit spending to be acknowledged by the FinCom, and DLS will acknowledge it having been approved.
so? I guess then we are looking for a.
Do you need the vote for this?
A vote, I
It
think,
does say
just to,
vote. So I was just going to say, it looks like we're looking for a motion to approve the deficit spending for snow and ice removal as presented in the packet.
So moved.
Thank you, Emily. A second.
Second.
Thank you, Henry. Any discussion before we vote?
just quickly. I don't know if it's a question for, the breakdown between private contractors and doing this in-house. I know there's definitely been more snow and ice this winter, right? But is some of the costs coming from that we're doing more in-house with overtime, or private contractor costs have gone up more, or?
Well, so far this winter, a lot of it is overtime because of when the storms have hit too. It's been on weekends. We had a couple of holidays.
Yeah.
So that's like double time right there. There's contractual obligations too, with these storms, based on how many hours they work consecutively. So that's a lot of it right there. Plus then we had a lot of, salting events, so we've gone through a lot of road salt.
Which has gone up too, so, okay.
More something, yes, I was gonna say, no snow on school days, much to my son's dismay this year.
I know, right?
Or there was one early release, that's it.
But I gotta say that they do a fantastic job compared to other towns, because I drive through Peabody and here, it's like big difference.
We appreciate it, it's a hard job. All right, any other discussion? All right, let's vote. Mark?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And Joe, yes. All right. Let's. Yeah, thank you, Chris. All right. We have a spot for future agenda discussion. I think we have a, we've already talked a bunch about our 4-week, I don't know what to call it, marathon or a sprint. Sprint, it's a sprint, I don't know, it's 4 weeks is a long time to sprint. But, so, next week, obviously, we get the real fun starts, we have the town budget.
That's right.
I believe, Sharon's given information to the whole committee about, and we've seen the budget as proposed, so obviously that's what we're talking about. The committee already asked and has received information about updated free cash projections and the spreadsheet for that. Is there anything we need to add to the agenda?
I think the budget will be pretty good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Jackie sent me a draft agenda. The agenda is like,
Very
welcome,
Yeah.
public comment, hearing on the budget,
Inflation has
approve
not
minutes.
declined.
We're out of here.
Probably,
So yeah, no, that'll be cool. All right. Anything else that we need to be thinking about for other future agendas? Talked about the, in the past, we've talked about the splitting, how we split our cash between free cash and stabilization fund. I don't know if that's something people actually care about or not. But, all right. I'm not hearing anything else. All right, then we have some minutes to approve.
I have one comment on
Certainly.
the minutes. I don't know how you do this, but when we were here in the audience, and I don't know if he signed in, but Dana Garino was in the audience. He was not, on Zooms, like I could see Karen Rose Gillis and Christopher Cook, but I was looking right at him. So
he signed it.
I don't know if he signed in though.
He did sign it when I walked up, I saw his name.
He did sign it, okay. But I don't see him listed as others present.
Because Jackie was not here, so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I guess Jackie might not have known.
So that's why I'm just telling Jackie, so it's Dana Garino.
She just put it in.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Marianne, is that a typo in your name there?
Where I didn't,
Instead of Mc-
Oh, it is. Good
Where?
catch. In liaison reports, third paragraph, the bottom of page 1.
oh yeah, there's no A. I didn't even notice in my own name. I was like looking at
So yes,
everywhere
it's-
else. I focus more on the
There we go.
content.
Yeah.
That's a friendly
eye.
amendment.
Yeah.
All right.
Motion to approve the 226 Finance Committee meeting minutes as amended.
Second.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Jeffrey. Any further discussion before we vote? All right, Mark,
Yes.
Ed, Joe McDonough,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Marianne,
Yes.
Jeffrey,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
John. Yes. Henry really wants to approve these minutes. Joe Garnahan, yes as well.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Marianne. Mark,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Emily. Yes. Mary Ann.
Yes.
Jeffrey.
Yes.
Hendry.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
And Joe Carnahan, yes. Thank you all. See you next week.
Very productive.